call to order our emergency call meeting. We'll ask Commissioner Belcher to give us a pledge, the invocation. Commissioner Booth to lead us in the pledge.
Let's all stand, please. Our Heavenly Father, we come before Thee humbly tonight asking Thy blessings on this meeting. We ask You to lead, guide, and direct us and give us knowledge and wisdom as we pursue the county's business. In our Heavenly Father's name, amen.
Amen. Raise the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, concerning the agenda, there's only one item on the agenda. Are there any objections to that? We entertain a motion to approve this agenda.
So moved.
A motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Appreciate your indulgence in this. Was called to a meeting about mid-morning this morning with Mr. White, and he asked to discuss the existing contract that he has with the county in regards to providing EMS service in the Belhaven-Pantigga area. And he indicated that it was his intention to cease those operations at the end of the month. We discussed that a little bit, and he made an offer to us about being able to transition that over. He and John are both here tonight. John can do the presentation. Mr. White's here to answer any questions you may have. He's been very gracious and wants to work with us on that transition.
Okay.
Evening, Commissioners. Mr. White from White Oak met this morning with his intentions of ceasing operations as of June, last day of this month, with the county taking over June 1st of this year. Mr. White has offered to sell the county their equipment, 2 ambulances, and all equipment with the exception of narcotics. Again, for a sum of $100,000. Is that correct?
That's correct.
To the county for a smooth transition into providing EMS services for the Belhaven area. We've gone through our supplies and our equipment with the county. We believe we have enough equipment and supplies to provide EMS services, not only for what we're doing in Bath and the 2 QRVs, but we feel we have enough equipment, medical supplies, and drugs to make it through to mid-July, even providing EMS services in Belhaven. The only thing we're looking at is staffing up 4 paramedics and 4 EMTs to continue operations and be a smooth transition into providing the EMS services in the Belhaven-Pantigga Township.
Okay, what is your plan for acquiring the personnel?
Mr. White has paramedics already working for his service. Some of those paramedics would be brought in as county employees. We also have part-time paramedics and EMTs that are expressing interest in working full-time with the county. We don't believe we'll have a problem staffing the paramedics or the EMTs for that unit.
Any other commissioners got any questions?
I'd like to say something, Mr. Chairman, if I can.
Go ahead.
I'd like to thank Mr. Ricky White and White Oak for coming in and serving the Belhaven area during a time of transition. You know, he came in when the hospital closed and came in originally with just 1 intermediate truck, whatever, and transitioned to 2 trucks, 1 paramedic truck and a second truck that was an intermediate truck, and has done that for a couple of years and done it very well. That you have not heard any complaints from the people of Belhaven about the service that he's provided. He's done a good job, and I just wanted to recognize that tonight before we begin the real discussion of what's fixing to take place.
I saw a hand this way.
Yeah.
Commissioner
Thank you,
Buzzy.
Mr. Chairman. I also want to thank Mr. White. But I do have a couple questions, John. Are we talking about one vehicle or two?
It'd be one ambulance.
One ambulance. What's the age of the vehicle and the condition?
It's a 2012 ambulance, diesel. And I've been on the truck. It's a very good truck.
In your opinion?
Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned about the opioids, the narcotics. Are there any other controlled substances?
No, the controlled substance, he'll have to maintain his controlled substance.
He'll
We will
maintain
not purchase the controlled substance. And let me correct myself, that would be two vehicles. It's one, both of the ambulances, he's offered for sale in that price, in the $100,000.
So two vehicles for $100,000.
And you'll use one of them as a backup.
One of them would be a backup for the county, one of them would be an online truck.
Okay, so in your opinion, the two vehicles could service our needs in
Yes.
in that area?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, John.
What is the mileage on that 2012?
I ain't sure, I think 127,000, I believe.
That's what I was told today.
And I assume that has been serviced properly over the years, and
It was serviced last week.
so you say it's a diesel, so if it's been serviced properly, the engine is in good shape. All right.
Commissioner Waters.
I'd like to thank you, Ricky, for what you've done for that area. Since I'm a resident of there, you came in 2009 or 2010 with the first truck, and then you stepped to the table 2 years ago and provided the paramedic level when the hospital closed. And I've not heard anything except good things about what you guys have done, and appreciate what you've done for the community and for the county, because I know that it's not just been a Belhaven and Pantickle ride, that you picked up a lot of slack over in the Bath, Pamlico Beach area too.
Commissioner Booth.
What's the model of the second truck, Mr. Ward?
2003.
And what's the mileage on that? Do you have any idea?
But off the top of my head, I'm not sure. It's two something, the low twos.
It's a diesel as well.
Yeah, diesel, got 7.3 motor in.
That's a 7.3 diesel. That's the last decent diesel.
You said it was
Ford.
200,
Yep.
203.
203.
Any other questions from commissioners?
I would like to make some statement about why, y'all probably wonder why I do things and all that. So the commissioners want to understand why I did. This is hard as it is for me to make people, commissioners. But, I've been down there 6 years, and I served the county, and I think first one contacted me was Adam O'Neill about putting our EMS service down there. And we provided no complaints. We've gone through 6 years process, but I kind of see which routes in the county wanted to go, and I felt like this would be a great opportunity because I think the budget that was coming up is only going to provide me one truck anyways, and I'm hoping when we talked this morning that we can keep some of the same employees down there because they know the area, they're good workers, everything. I feel like I'm turning them loose because the county can offer benefits that I can't offer, and they'd be fine a lot more because they've been asking me for the last year what's going to happen. They worry about the jobs and all that. I don't have nothing against the county, nothing against the town of Belhaven. That's the reason why I mentioned this morning, I think John, when I mentioned to him I was going to be shutting down this month, I saw his face kind of do, what we going to do now? We ain't got no trucks. We can't operate that. That's the reason I come and thought about this yesterday about offering everything I got down there. I got 2 trucks with all the equipment, all the monitors. I probably enough supplies in the supply room last a month. And all the equipment, like the sleeping quarters, the chairs, everything is going to go with this price I gave. I think I'm giving the county a great deal. If I won't check behind me and see, I'm not trying to stick nobody. Any questions y'all have for me? Why? Anything about my service?
Well, I want to say this to you. There would be no way that I don't think anybody on this board would ever feel like that you were trying to stick us for anything. I mean, because I mean, since you've been here, I've only known you to be a person of integrity, so therefore, I mean, we would never think that, but sometimes business decisions have to be made, and you're just making a business decision.
Well, I had to make this business decision because, you know, in my one's office, I'm growing, and I need to be there more time to take care of that business there. And I feel like give opportunity here to go on, and that's why I'm decided to do what I'm doing.
Commissioner Brand.
Yeah, I also want to thank you, Mr. White. I know whenever you make a decision like that, it's a hard decision to make, and we appreciate what you've done over the years. One question I do need to ask you, the drugs that's on that bus, what will it take to replace the drugs that
Well, the
we
only
need
thing we're
to?
talking about is narcotics, the drugs that's locked up, you know, anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And the county's already set up to do that. They just, the day of the transaction, the last day of the month or the first day of the month, I just take that out of the locked cabinet and I take mine out. Well, you don't put yours in there, you can.
Okay.
Are you going to continue to operate on the regular transport in the county?
I like to. Y'all let me keep my franchise. Yes, I do. It won't be the emergency service, it'll be just the non-emergency transport service.
Any other questions?
And like I said, Commissioners, this was hard for me to make this decision, but I felt like this would be the right time for the employees. I'm concerned about the employees down there more than anything else right now, not only the servicing the people down there, but the employees down there too. Give them an opportunity to do something different.
Well, you make a good statement when you say that they know the area.
Yes, sir.
Even with GPS in a rural area, you can be off almost a half a mile.
I know. I worked down there first month myself. When we started, GPS ain't always correct down there.
When you pull mine up and try to hit it on GPS, you're about a mile, almost a mile away. And we've got some other areas where, but if people are familiar with the area, most of the time they pretty well know who lives in what home.
Well, that'd be up to the county to what to do it. I recommend to to use these same people, but it'd be up to the county to make that decision.
How long, excuse me, Mr. How long have you had these employees?
Some of them been with me since day one. Now, when we started the paramedic program, 2 years ago, I believe, when the hospital shut down. Now, some of them are newer ones there. Now, some of them that even was there a long time ago got their paramedic too. So, I got some employees been there for a long time, and a lot of them live right here in the county too.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns?
Ricky, you did indicate to me this morning that it was your intent that even if we didn't pick up all of those employees, that you were going to keep them and move them over.
I'm glad you brought that up, Mr. Algood. I mentioned to them when I talked to them, had a meeting with them this morning, tell them about what my plans were. If the county do not elect to hire these people, I'm gonna give these opportunity to come work with me in Windsor. So they won't be without a job. None of them be without a job. They want to work.
Okay. Mr. Manager, now concerning this, if the board decides to accept this offer, you're suggesting as to monies?
The proposal that Mr. White has put out in front of you is $100,000 for all his equipment, both his ambulances, his radios, everything on the truck, all the supplies and everything. We would need to obviously inventory all that and get a bill of sale if you chose to move forward with that, work out with him the transfer of the titles. We've given you a budget amendment that would do that. We've looked at the existing budget. We would be able to handle the personnel, the additional personnel costs in June through the existing budget, so we wouldn't need to come back for you for any operating funds for this last month. But we would need obviously the capital, the $100,000 capital piece, if you so chose to do that.
Okay.
Now, one thing I want to make sure I correct Mr. Algood about, y'all did pay me in advance all the way to the last of June. Now, I want to, that was part of the reason I'm talking about this, not to take that away, because the employees that, I'm going to have to pay their vacation time out and all that, because they earned that. That's part of the stuff. Yeah, so when I get through, it won't have none of that left when I got through everything. You follow what I'm saying? What's left in the month of June. I was paid all the way to last of June. So it's a month more of money that I was paid. I was gonna let that be not part of this $100,000 now. So y'all have already paid me ahead of time, 3 months in advance. And my budget don't runs out until last of June.
Ricky, how about the third-party billing during the month of June?
Now, I won't have nothing to do, when y'all take over 1st of June, that's y'all's.
Okay.
So I'm glad I brought that up in case it's a question later on. Anything start June the 1st is y'all's money that you get, that you collect, start that date. Now, if I get in back pay, it's mine.
Ricky, just let me clarify that, because I wasn't sure I understood that, but you're saying that part of the contract is that you would expect that contract to be paid out completely and not stop at the end of the month, at the end of this
Well,
month?
you already paid me for it.
Right
It's
on.
already been paid out.
So you wouldn't, so your intention is not to reimburse
Go
back
back
for
and
that,
reimburse that 1 month.
for that 1 month?
I didn't explain that to you this morning while talking about that. And that's the reason I gave such a low price on these trucks and equipment and all. And
What's that 1 month?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't have that number. I ain't sure exactly what it is. Do you know?
I think it's 50,000.
It's around 50 a month, yes.
It's 50.
I said, don't give me any heartburn.
Even look at that, if y'all take a look at what I'm offering, it's still way y'all, it's a good deal.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
John, how much are those vehicles worth?
How much are the vehicles worth? Well, the truck that the 2012 I paid 4 years ago, I paid $140,000 for with no equipment in it. And I just put a $20,000 monitor in it first this year, a new monitor. So,
I concur that.
Backup truck only made 114 calls.
Just without, we got the stretcher in there, it's.
I can't remember. I would guess that the
1,000 for 2 of them.
The ROMs, the 2003, 25,000. That's fair price for the ROMs. 2003. So with all the equipment, that's $100,000.
Yeah, that I understand.
I'd say it's
It's worth that.
Is it worth 150?
Just the supplies, the edit supplies, the extra medication we had, the one month is worth it.
Okay, thank you, John.
is there any other questions I can answer for y'all? Anybody?
Okay, no other questions? Is there a motion from this board?
So moved.
that $50,000 meant a little bit.
Well, we can talk about it.
I'm not as, I don't know, that's a $50,000.
Ricky, what was the total number of calls for the 2 trucks over, say, the last 12 months? What I'm trying to come up with is what a 30-day third-party billing looks like.
About 850 calls.
188 calls for 12 months total for the Belhaven area. 114 was on the second truck, so.
Well, I'm looking at 74 calls
Somewhere
times a
anywhere
third
from
party.
70 to 80 calls. And, this month, the new clinic opens, and I'm really expecting more calls. I'm predicting probably more calls. So you probably figure around at least 80 calls a month.
What's been your, what are you getting, Ricky, in a typical month reimbursement from your third party?
Actually, collecting
Collecting, yeah.
probably anywhere from $25,000 to $30,000 a month.
So that would
Knocks
offset.
you back 20 to 20,
Yeah.
25.
Commissioner Buzzio.
Thank you.
Question?
Did you get a second?
Not yet.
Okay.
Oh,
Let me
I
ask one
second.
last let me ask one.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay.
You stated that you had already paid your employees. That's the reason for that month's salary. Is that correct?
No, sir. I hadn't paid the employees for the whole month. They get paid every 2 weeks. But the county had already paid me in advance.
Okay.
They always done 3 months in advance.
What is your payroll for a month for those employees?
I ain't got them numbers in front of me, I don't really know.
On his last 12-month breakdown financials, they're running about $40,000 a month. Over the 12 months, it was right at 40,000.
So what happened to if we take over your operation and the end of this month is your last day, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So if we hire those employees, we'll be hiring them from June 1st.
No, you be hiring from June 1st, yes. You
Yes.
be county employees then.
Okay, so I'm still lost. Why is that 50,000, that month's salary still in the equation?
Because I pay, or the county pay me a advance.
Understand that?
And that's money already in, that I have already got.
See,
To
if
operate with.
if
Operate.
I-
I always buy supplies and everything ahead of time.
I understand what you said earlier, was you said that the employees who would no longer be working for you have accumulated vacation.
Vacation time.
And that you want to pay out
want
those
to-
those line items.
I do want to pay them out.
Okay.
If they got 2 weeks vacation, or a week's vacation, or time bill up, I want to pay them out.
Okay.
I think it's only my obligation when they've been with me for 6 years. They deserve that. They deserve that vacation pay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have one question.
Okay.
Can I just comment?
Yes.
If he pays them, if we pick up some of those employees come June 1st, can he also pay them that retirement? No issue there?
He would be paying them under a separate.
Separate? Okay.
It wouldn't have anything to do with ours, but
All right, thank you.
He's paying them for the accrued vacation days for 11 months.
That's correct.
Okay. Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second.
I made the motion.
What was it?
Approve the 100,000.
To approve the $100,000 to buy the 2 trucks
that includes the budget amendment.
and the budget amendment of $100,000.
So I guess my question is the 50,000 still in limbo or not? Because that's not included in the motion.
Well, that's
Let's
already,
just get that $50,000 out in the open. I think what you're driving at is you want that $50,000 back.
No, I don't want it all. I want 20. I was looking at, we collect 25,000 in third-party reimbursements. The other 25,000, I don't know about there. What the justification is for him getting that if he's not working that much.
Mr. Chairman.
Good.
After you pay your employees their vacation leave, and you take out the money that you've already spent on supplies, how much money is going to be left out of that $50,000?
I'll probably be in the red. You don't know the truth about it.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I red. I probably won't have none left.
Okay.
If we get to
We got it.
25.
You know, I've been
Basically.
I've been truthful for y'all the whole 6 years I've been here. I'm not going to, if you like to see it at the end of the month, I'll be glad to show it to you.
I think you're offering us a reasonable deal.
I think,
Basically, what we're doing is paying 125,000,
Somewhere close. Yeah.
and we'll get the 25 back. So, and
Right.
it seemed like a fair enough deal, I guess.
All right. The question's been called. All in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. All opposed? 7-0. It's a done deal.
Thank you, Mr. White.
thank y'all.
Thank you.
At this time, we entertain a motion to adjourn the emergency meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor? Adjourn. All right, now we call to order our first budget workshop. Quick transition. Mr. Manager, you have the steering wheel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. What we intended to do tonight with you is go through on the budget summary, starting in your manual, starting on page 19. Part of this budget document, we've included your summary of authorized positions, your pay and classification schedule. I've always included that in budget so that the board had that, and it was a part of it, as well as the fee manual that's in the back. But our intent is to go through the revenue side first, and then start on the expenditure side. We have the department heads. Our intent was to try to get through general government and human services this evening, and then tomorrow evening work on community services, education, and public safety. And then we'll work on enterprise funds Thursday night. And then the next week, we'll do service expansions for y'all to look at those, and then wrap up, hopefully, at that last meeting, or however it kind of leads us to that. So from that side, I think you've gotten my message that we originally presented to you. And what we'll do is go through, starting on page 19, and I guess, you know, as we go through this, ask us questions. We've got the revenue details. What we've provided for you is the roll-up in the front, and then we drill down further as you go back into the document. So we'll be glad to drill down into those as much as you need, as much information as you're looking for. Is that acceptable to everyone?
Works for me.
Okay.
Well, before we start, I've got some questions. What is the board trying to do? What is our philosophy on this budget? I know the manager told us he was presenting us with a continuation budget, but you don't know what the budget is till you actually see the budget. Is our purpose to approve the continuation budget when it's all over with minor tweaks? Is our purpose to live within our income, and that is to not spend any more money than what we have projected for income for the coming year, with or without raising taxes?
Mr. Chair, if I could just address a piece of that. As we originally talked about in presenting the budget, our assessment was to take the current services that you have and present those as to what it would cost to do those same services last year. As we went into the planning retreat, that's kind of what we talked about, and we asked where you wanted to go with that, and what policy decisions were related to that. So in a continuation budget for us doesn't necessarily mean, it simply means that we've looked at what the services you're providing this year, what it costs to provide those same services next year. Now, if the board says we want to do away with certain services, then we need to understand that from you, because we haven't heard that yet as to what you may, if you want to take something out, we need to know that, because that's a policy decision, or we need to hear clearly from you where that needs to go. This is a continuation of existing services and what it costs to do those in the upcoming year.
Commissioner Breen.
I like what you're saying, but there's no possible way that I'll vote for a budget with a 2-cent increase in taxes in it. We got to find a way to make that happen without raising taxes.
And we're certainly willing to look at that in any direction you have from the board. Again, that, for us, that's a policy decision by the board. I mean, if you say to us you want to do away with this service, we'll run the numbers and do that for you. But for us, it's so broad for us, for staff to go in and say, well, we're going to do this or we're going to do that without direction from the board. So what part of this is seeking direction from you, if there are things you want to do as we go through this budget, for us to amend.
That 2 cents is what, $1.4 million?
1.2, roughly
1.2.
$600,000 for a penny.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
What becomes the issue is whether or not you get that money. Already the budget proposes to go into the fund balance in order to balance the budget. So if you're not going to vote for a budget that has a tax increase, you're faced with two options at this point. Are you going to reduce spending, or are you going to go deeper into the fund balance? That's a policy question that would, I think, help the whole board before we start going through this budget and looking at these details, to help us to make our decisions as we go through this.
Or a combination of the two.
Yeah, a combination, maybe half and half, a half out of fund balance and half in cuts.
You got three options, really.
Reduce services.
Well, you could vote for the tax increase.
Yeah, you got four options. But I think one of them's probably pretty much off the board. So you really got three options: reduce services, increase taxes, or third one's a combination of the, as far as fund balance is concerned.
You know,
Reduce services, increase the use of fund balance, or a combination of the two.
well, my thoughts are, and I haven't really shared them with anybody, is that pretty much to hold our budget as to what it was last year, with the only increases that I really see are pretty much for the EMD, and that's in the 911 center. But basically, pretty much, it's my thoughts to pretty much hold the line, and which I'm probably gonna get in trouble now, but I'm confident in that we should also keep in the 2% COLA for the employees. That's just where I am.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
as I've taken a look at the budget, I would like to see us find somewhere in here that we can cut in the neighborhood of at least $1 million. I'm not very supportive of going into the general fund beyond the 2.6 million or
2.2.
2.2. I think as we go through that, we can find some areas that we can cut. And since I'm not running for re-election or running for election this time, either we had to find a cut, or I think we need to have the tax increase. Now, if I was running for re-election, I wouldn't do that. But
Put it to him, Frankie.
you know, we'll worry about that later. But looking at the fund balance, that we're bringing it down to just a little over 25%, and I think anything below that is wrong. I think 25% should be the very bottom on the fund balance.
What is the percentage of fund balance right now? 31, 32%?
If you'll turn to page 23 in your book.
23?
23, general fund appropriated fund balance. You'll see in that table, the fiscal year ending date, what the unassigned fund balance is. Now, when you say unassigned, that's spendable. So that doesn't, that takes out the reserve by statute, all the things that you can't legally spend. And that's your spendable piece. And it shows a percentage of expenditures, and then on the far right hand, you see where the fund balance policy of the board was. So back in 11 and 12, it was 20%, then you bumped it to 35, and you'll see those percentages. Now, what we show is based on our expenditure projections and where we think you're gonna roll up into this fiscal year, is where we show the projection on the second one down where it says estimated June 30th of 16. And we show that at $15.1 million. So that is a percentage of 25.44 of your existing expenditures. Now, the change that you look for, then we project forward and we say, it's in our recommended budget, there's $900,000 worth of capital expenditures in the fund balance appropriated. So we've taken that off the top. So our assumption is, through that estimated projected June 30th of 17, the budget performs the way it's supposed to perform, it balances out, and you only spend the 900 that's in the recommended for capital. And that's where you get to the 14.2. Now, you'll see that the percentage changes a little bit. The reason that percentage changes is because your denominator is now different, because we've pulled solid waste out into its own enterprise fund as we've recommended in this budget. So you're now dividing by a different number than you were at the beginning. You know, when you have revenues over expenditure, percentage of fund balance per percentage of expenditures. So the expenditure number is a little lower because you're pulling out the solid waste and making it its own enterprise, and it's not under general fund anymore. So that's where you see
It's making it look better.
well, it makes it Well, I mean, it depends upon how you want to look at that. When it comes out under an enterprise fund,
Makes it look like a higher percentage than we had before.
well, it does bump the percentage up simply because you're using a smaller denominator.
Smaller denominator.
And that's appropriate because the solid waste is in its own enterprise fund and it's supporting itself. It's not using general fund dollars to support the solid waste fund. So,
Going back to that fund balance number, I'm sorry, I stand corrected. It's 919,000. If you don't take that out of the general fund, that pushes our percentage at the end of the year. If everything happens like you're projecting, it would be 27%, 26.9 if you keep that in there. The thing that Robert was talking about as it relates to the solid waste, one of the reasons you have the fund balance is for uncertainty and emergencies. In the solid waste, that's a pretty concrete number every year. It's not, it's so much per parcel.
well, it's a business fund and it should be treated that way, just like the water fund. If you had sewer, like the sewer fund or like the electric fund, those kind of things, it's a proprietary style fund. And the users of that fund should be paying for that through fees and services instead of through general tax dollars. So, and Mr. Chairman, just real quick on you mentioned earlier the 2% COLA. I just want to clarify for the board that is not in the continuation budget. That is a part of the expansion budget. That's the way we've always shown, or I've always shown, those things as an additional piece on top of it. So if your intent was to do that, you would need to look in the continuation budget and find revenues to support that. Does that make sense? That's the difference we have in a continuation and an expansion. It's something new or different that you didn't have. And I've always put COLAs in as something new that the board should look at every year if they chose to do that.
Commissioner Booth.
I agree partially with what Frankie is talking about, but I looked over this budget, and correct me if I'm wrong, and he was talking about finding $1 million worth of cuts. And from my interpretation, I'm just the old country boy from Acre Station, maybe I'm off, but if you cut anything, it's gonna have to be employees. Because from what I said, it looked like sales tax are down, and our employees is on the incline because of the EMS services that we have. And from my interpretation, that's what's driving this cost. Am I correct?
I think you're very correct in that there's a combination of things. You've seen a downturn in some of your revenues, but you've also seen an increase in some of your expenditures relating to new programs that have been put in place. And that there hasn't been, that over the years, you've relied upon the growth in the community to fund those things, those new programs, without finding additional revenue to do it. And now it's come to a point where with those revenues turning over a little bit, you're not able to do that. And you need to find revenues. You either need to cut services or you need to find additional revenues to pay for those services that the revenues have not kept pace traditionally or historically with the growth in the county.
And the next thing that I've tried to wrestle with all the time, and I don't mind cutting budget, and I'm open to looking for wherever you can find $1 million worth of cuts. Frankie, Gary, I'm willing to look at it. But I talked to the manager about this also, and maybe I'm wrong again. Probably 10 years ago, 12 years ago, longer, the people of Beaufort County passed a bond referendum on our school bonds, and we have not passed that. We have absorbed those interests, that money. For 10 years, we have absorbed it. And I stand to be corrected. I don't think we have raised that bond referendum one time since it has passed, have we?
That's my understanding, and I think from your point, and we talked a little bit about that, there is restricted sales tax that goes to pay for debt service, either debt service or capital expenditures, and the amount of money that's coming out of the Article 40 and 42, the restricted side of it, is only paying your debt service. And so any additional funding that you're doing for extra capital or for regular capital, let me back up. Any of the capital that you're providing for the school system is coming out of not restricted sales tax, but out of your local dollars. So to that point, as you've bumped up over the years, you've absorbed that either by some growth in the ad valorem, some growth in the valuation that's caused the ad valorem value or caused the tax amount to come in higher, not because you changed the rate, because the rate's been the same. When you had reval, you were at 60 cent. The next year you dropped to 50 cent. The next year you immediately went up 3 cent, and it's been 53 cents then. So the tax rate hasn't changed, and it's A times B equals C. So with the rate being the same, your value with new stuff added, because remember, valuation is a snapshot. Once every 8 years, you take a snapshot of what the value in the county is. The only way that increases is when you put new things on the books. We don't go out every year and look at it and say, well, your property went up. Likewise, and this has really been unusual this last 8 to 10 years, we've never seen property values go the other way. And again, it works to your advantage when you take a snapshot and property values are going up, and then you reval. But when it goes down, it works to your disadvantage. So again, that number stays the same because you only do it once every 8 years. So you've used additional resources within your existing budget to fund those additional things based on that slight amount of new development that's occurred in the county.
Commissioner Bussey.
Chairman, I'm not willing to take anything off the table at this point in time. I want to base my decisions based upon needs in the county. When I look through this budget, preliminary budget that's been put forth here, I see that there could be massive layoffs now. If we don't do something in 2016, 2017, then we got 2017, 2018, we'll really be cutting services. So I look at this as we're going to be having some important discussions. We're going to have to make some tough decisions, but I'm not willing to take anything off the table. I want to base my considerations based upon need and not political considerations.
Big boy.
Anybody else?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think what we need to look at here is what's really going on in the world today. And as the manager has alluded to, when things are inflating and you're spending money and you're growing and building new things, the county has spent that money. The taxpayers never really knew that the tax spending was going up, but it was because they were looking at the tax rate. You need to look at the dollars spent. The truth in this particular budget is that we are spending $3.7 million more than last year's revenue in this budget. That's what we're proposing to do. And we've said that we're going to collect about $55 million again in revenue. And we're spending $3.7 million more than we are taking in. And for those of us that run households and have paychecks and have to live off of those paychecks, we understand what that means when you start spending more than you're taking in. The other thing that's going on in the world economy is you have finally hit where the slope is changed. The slope's been going up on inflation up till now. We are going to be going into deflation for the next several years. Doesn't matter what anybody does, it's still going to take a while to turn the big ship around. Next year is going to be worse than this year. One of the things that's happened, one of the reasons revenue is going down in Beaufort County is you have a personal property schedule. And the biggest personal property schedule in Beaufort County is PCS phosphate. PCS phosphate, that's a depreciation schedule that is whacked down some every year. And they paid less taxes this year than they paid the year before. The fertilizer business is not doing well in the world today. PCS has cut their capital budget for their company worldwide from billions down to about $100 million. In that particular business, all you're doing at that, spending that amount of money is sustaining your operations. And what that says is that PCS is going to be paying us less money next year than they did this year. So from the standpoint of looking after the welfare of the citizens of Beaufort County, I still advocate that we should live within our means and stop borrowing, even though we're borrowing from ourselves, by spending more money than we are taking in. Raising taxes is not an option because that flies in the face of depreciating assets. and it makes it more difficult for people to pay those taxes. Go back to the Great Depression and look and see what happened during that period of time, because that's simply what happened during that period of time. Borrowing money from ourselves, which is really not borrowing money, taking money out of the fund balance, is wasting the assets that we have. So we need to live within our means, and if you really did justice to this budget, you really need to take $3.7 million out of it, not $1 million. Now, I realize that there's some justification. You're raising taxes on people by $50 per household. You're raising a lot of money when you do that for the garbage fund, the solid waste fund, whatever you want to call it. So that's a tax increase, whether you want to look at it that way or not. So the $3.7 million to come out of the budget is still justified. What I would like to see this board do is agree on a number for a budget that is much less than what we have presented to us. And then you can do the pluses and minuses from that to know how you're doing as you go through this budget. And ultimately, when we do this, you still have to go back and do a general review of, do you really want to cut this out? And do you really want to keep this in there in order to balance the budget? Because if you don't balance this budget based on income and cut some of this money out of this, the people of Beaufort County are going to suffer more next year than they are this year. And regardless of what the government tells you about how great things are, those who are earning a living, working for a living, know that it's nowhere nearly as great as the federal government wants you to believe.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, I just got through passing a handout. What I did was look at 2015 actual numbers, which is based on the audited numbers, and that total budget was $56.9 million. And when you look at 2017, the recommended is 59.4. That's an increase of 2.5 million, which is 4.4%. And I've highlighted what I consider to be the real big numbers. And when you look at it, it's looking at actual numbers for 15, because I don't have much, I've lost credibility with the budget process that we had last year. So I think you got to really look at what our present CFO and manager put together on the 2017. We're looking at an increase in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of $4.3 million. And but that's over a 2-year period. So if you divided it by 2, it would be a little over $2 million. If you look at the recommended tax rate increase, you're looking at 3.8%. And I think what the staff was trying to do was show us that if we approve this total budget, then we were going to have an increase of 3.8% to finance this growth that we've had over the last 2 years in spending. So.
Yeah, but the part of that equation that's not in there is that other $2.5 million that's coming out of fund balance, where we are selling our birthright. You can't get that money back.
Well, I'd comment on that, and I'm not sure. Here it is. I asked the staff to prepare a number from the capital expenditures for the last 18 months, starting in December 2014, and that capital expenditure number is $3.3 million. And then when you go down into the public school sector, the allocation above what the state statute requires is 2.3. So if you add those two numbers together, you're looking at $5.5 million. And, you know, I don't want the public to think that we've been pulling money down out of the fund balance to pay for salaries and so forth. We've been pulling fund balance down for capital expenditures, things that we've postponed doing in this county, which is a wise use of money. But I think we've pulled it down now to where we should say we're just not going to dip into it until we pull it back up. You know, our goal is to be at 35%. I'd like to see it move back up to 30%. I think we need to be 25 to 30%. I think anything around this 25% is a danger for this county because of, you know, the emergencies if we have a hurricane cleanup and so forth. And I'll stop with that.
Frankie, on this paper you passed out, did you put any money here for education, students, college?
No. This
It's just,
this is where I was trying to pull out big items. You know, when you start trying to cut the budget and you say you can't cut it $1 million, then, you know, it would have to come out of these areas. I know we've got $275,000 to tear down the Beaufort County home that could be postponed.
Brian, on that sheet that he just passed out, this emergency medical services, which the increase of 8,000%. But how much of that 8,000% is actually being paid by the special tax? I mean, we need to know that to get a reasonable idea of how much it's actually, we're actually paying out of our general fund.
Well, I think if you look, you know, in 2015, it's got $13,000 in EMS, which was a piece, a small, was John here then? So that was when John was hired for that very little piece. So you had one person, not a couple months worth of salary. 2 months worth of salary. And then you put in place the EMS service. So that's a large bump.
So this money here from the 13 to the 1.167 is actually coming out of general fund?
It is coming out of general fund. Now, you've got a billing piece that's in play right now that we've got an agreement with the billing company to start billing for that. They're working through our Medicaid, Medicare numbers right now, so you'll see that revenue. That's put in this year to show that revenue offset.
So this is just additional expenditures on emergency medical services, not what this is above and beyond what we had in 2015.
Yes, sir. You didn't have all the EMS taxes that are in the county. That is currently are still going to those agencies that are providing that service. Now, in this budget, there are some changes that occur with that in the Bath area, where there's a little bit of change there, where we're picking up that service from community because they're not able to respond to those. So there is some revenue that comes in from that side, as well as the projected billing.
But you've got that projected up to 5 cents, but it's, right now, we're paying that for that service in community out of general fund, basically. Less whatever third-party reimbursements there are down there. Which is costing us a lot.
I've looked at the numbers quite a bit as it relates to the Belhaven Pantigga EMS expenditures, and for the last 2 years, we've subsidized that operation to the tune of $400,000 ballpark each year. So that's $800,000 that we've had a subsidy to do the White Oak contract.
That's correct. You have.
And in addition to that, we have subsidized solid waste for the last 2 years to the tune of $2.1 million.
You have, yes, sir. And this recommended budget corrects that by pulling the solid waste out and increasing the solid waste fee so that it is a standalone, revenues coming in equal expenditures going out on the solid waste side. And then also, you know, we had, our recommendation in the budget was to reduce the 2 trucks to 1 truck based on the backup plan that we had formulated and put in play. And then there was a service expansion that we were proposing to you that would have said in December or 1st of January, we would take over the service down there and save money because we can do it at a cheaper rate. Obviously, with the actions tonight, you will pick up some additional savings out of that. We'll get a whole year's worth of savings.
They're already paying 5-cent tax down there, aren't they?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
we've been doing that since 2010.
But you should come, by going back to 1 truck and taking it over ourselves, we may not come to the break-even point, but we should come close. It shouldn't be costing us anywhere near $400,000 a year anymore.
It is very difficult to make money in a 911 EMS system.
Yeah, I don't want to make money, I
Try to
just
get
don't
as
want
close-
to cost me money out of the general
You
fund.
can try to get as close as you can. It's difficult to get to a break even because it is a certain, because you have to carry everybody no matter what. It's not
Right.
like on the convalescent side where you can say, until, you know, if I got your credit card, that's fine. But for 911 services, we have to go. And you're not gonna, it's tough. It's almost impossible to break even on that. So there will always be some general fund subsidy of that, always.
But aren't those special taxes accounted for in the general fund? Aren't they, they're rolled into the general fund?
The special, no, they're out in an EMS fund. Now, some of them come back in, like in the transfers piece, the EMS taxes go into one side under the EMS fund. Now, we pull some of those, like the contract for the city of Washington out in the Old Fort area. We actually transfer that money back into the general fund because we pay out of the general fund that contract for Washington. So, but otherwise, they come in and then go back out to those agencies. That's the way it's been set
So
up.
they're not a part of the general fund of this 55, this total budget that we're looking at of what we call the general fund budget.
Correct.
That's in addition to that.
Yes, sir. Those are outside of they're not part of the general fund, except for those little transfer that comes in. You can see that in the transfers in and out piece.
And we're raising those taxes in this budget.
In two areas, we've recommended that you do that. In the Old Ford Cherry Run area, it was 4 cents. You were subsidizing that cost to do that with general fund to the tune of about $14,000. So what we said was, if that EMS tax is supposed to pay for the EMS coverage in that area, then let's take it to 4.5 cents to pay for that. No, we didn't say take it to 5 cents because that would have been more than what was being covered in that area. And with service district taxes, they have to stay in the district in which they're collected to be used in that district. So there was no sense in us raising it because we would cover it. So 4.5 cents would cover that. And then we proposed in the Bath area to bring that to 5 because even at 5 cents in that area, you're still not going to cover all the costs.
But we don't have our provider numbers as yet to be able to bill.
That is currently in play. They're currently putting those numbers together through Medicaid, Medicare.
Yeah,
We anticipate those.
it can take 6 months to get them though.
They've been working on that for a while, so it's our anticipation that in the next 30 to 45 days, and you've got a year, you can go back and bill a year prior. And-
Once you get the number.
Right, and they've been keeping all that in order so that once we got those, they could get that in play.
One thing I'd like to know, and for the meeting that we're gonna have, is how many vacant positions there are in the county and where they're at.
There are, right now, as I can recall, there are 3. There is a risk manager position that has not been filled yet. There is a HR position that has not been filled yet. And there is wait a minute, there's 2. There is the assistant finance director position that has not been filled yet. And there is an admin person that was approved last year for finance that we've made a recommendation to you in as part of a service expansion that would be a no cost based on some cuts to fill that for a staff accountant's position.
Are these positions that have been filled in the past and you're advertising for somebody to replace somebody who was there, or are these new positions?
The risk manager piece is not. You put that in play this year. The admin assistant.
That's never been filled before.
That's never been filled before, no, sir. Y'all approved that a couple months ago. We said it was gonna take us a while to get it filled, and we've actually held on that. We actually could have filled it. We've got some very good applicants, but we held on that simply because we didn't wanna do that until we got through budget. The admin assistant 1 was an administrative position that the former CFO got approved last year that has not, it was filled with a temporary position, and we did away with that temporary position. It was being staffed with a temporary staff person. We did away with that, but the position is still there, and we funded it. The deputy finance director position is a position that it was Ms. Lofton's prior position. That position has not been filled yet. That is one that you have had filled in the past, and you definitely need to fill going forward. The human resource technician was a position that was put in last year with Mr. Winley. That position has not been filled. It hasn't been filled prior. It's a new position. According to this, there are 1, 2, 3 detention officers that are open right now. There's an administrative assistant position 1 in DSS, an accounting clerk 4 position in DSS, a chore provider in DSS, and then in water, there is a maintenance technician operator position that's open.
Round 10 to
Mr. Chairman. In the case of hiring employees, you know, even though we have spent a lot of money on these favorite capital projects, if you will, the number of employees that the county in 2014, and this is information provided by the manager, in 2013 rather, we had 307 employees in Beaufort County. In fiscal year, at the end of going into the coming year, the budget we're talking about, will be 355 employees. That's 48 employee increase. That's something like 13 or 14% increase in staff. So one of the things that's been troubling for me since, and I'll say this, since Paul Spruill left here, is that there have been no discussions about how to make staff more efficient and about how to keep the number of staff down. This thing has gone wild from 2013 until now. And we need to have some discussions about how to control our payroll, because that is a very rapid growth rate in payroll.
So on page 13 in your budget, you have that document that shows, that spreadsheet that shows the summary of authorized full-time positions by cost center and by going back to fiscal year 12-13, and you can see where those positions were increased. So like in animal control has been 4 ever since 12-13. And then you can see where there were increases. Like this recommended budget, there are 5 for communications. That's the EMD piece. And that just shows you as you go across.
We've had 17 on the EMS side.
You have, that was the start,
17.
that was the EMS piece, yes, sir.
And how many do we have in the finance department?
There are 6 proposed positions, and you have 6 funded positions.
And how many they're not all filled?
2 of those are not filled.
2 of those are
The
not
assistant
filled.
finance director position is not filled, and then the admin assistant position is not filled yet.
Okay.
Well, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
But, you know, this leads us to the point with all of this talk and all this stuff that's been put on the table. In order for us to go forward and decide what we're going to cut, if anything, or what we're going to continue to support, we need to find a number that we can all come close to, that we're targeting, and then we know what we're looking for in the budget. Because if you're not going to come up with that number tonight, and you're going to leave this budget like it is, then I would make a motion that we all go home and do nothing, because that's what we're doing.
Well, I think it's a little premature. We've got scheduled, 5 nights for us to make any firm decisions tonight. One last comment on EMS, because that's been one of the things I've been concerned about in the county before I got elected and since I've got elected. If this board approves the increase for the Bath Township, we're going to come extremely close. When you look at the money collected in the Bath Township and the Pantega Township, of being able to fund that. The town of Belhaven made a contribution of 5%, and I'm going to ask Pantega, the town of Pantega, and the town of Bath to step to the table. They've not paid anything since we went on the EMS. They've gotten a free ride. So we're going to ask those town councils to make a contribution equal to 5%.
5 cents.
A 5-cent tax rate.
Well, I'm willing to sit and look at some cuts, but I want to go on the record right now. I'm not for cutting employees. I mean, anything else you can find, the $2 million worth of cuts, I'll go with it, but I'm not in for cutting employees. And I'm wide open for that, Mr. Richards.
Okay. I don't think anybody's going to actually consent to any given number, so I think it was best we just proceed. Go ahead.
Why don't I make a
Logical
motion?
place, logical place to start for me, and this is gonna help Brian, is that if you're not willing to do the tax increase of 2 cents, that's $1.2 million. You gotta find $1.2 million worth of cuts. I mean, that's the place to start. Now, if you wanna make more than that, that's fine. But you gotta start looking through this budget to find 1.2 million. Each commissioner needs to go home and find,
I can't find.
say, and come back with a list of what he would cut to get to 1.2 million. I mean, that's simple, and Brian can make the same list. What would you cut? I mean, everybody needs to make their list, and then we need to come together and say, okay, if you're not gonna increase taxes, this is where we gotta cut out.
And I think that's kind of what we've indicated in the way we try to approach the budget, with it being a continuation of service expansion, is that when you look at saying we're going to do selective cuts, you're going to go in and take out this, take out that, you're pushing capital off, you're pushing training off, you're pushing off things that employee development, those kind of things that put you behind the ball for years to come. We've got issues right now with facilities. We need to be spending more money on our facilities, looking after our infrastructure. That's why we would ask you to say, tell us what, you get to the point where we think we put a budget together, and I'm sure you can find some cuts in there. I absolutely believe you can find some cuts in there. But what we believe we put together the budget that is at the point where if you want to make significant cuts, you need to tell us which programs you want to do away with. Because from a philosophical standpoint, from my piece, you're wasting money if you cripple a department to the extent that they can't do their job. You're just wasting money. They might as well not even be there, because if they're just sitting around not able to do anything, they shouldn't even be there. You should say, we're going to do away with that program. Now, that's a tough decision, but otherwise, you shouldn't be doing it to begin with. So, and again, we'll do what you tell us to do, but when we look at a budget and we say, what does it take to do next year exactly what you're doing this year? This is what it costs. This is what it costs to do next year exactly what you're doing this year. So tell us what programs you want to stop doing or what you want to change. I mean, that's the only way we can save significant money out of that budget. That's why we build the budget the way we do, because it's a policy decision by the board to say, we want this program, we don't want this program.
Mr. Chairman.
Good.
The manager's right. This is a decision for this board to make. It's not a decision that we need to palm off on the manager or anybody else, because he has done what we sent him to do. It's up to us to decide whether you want this budget to stay where it is, whether you want to reduce this budget, whether you want to do away with some programs to put the efficiencies into government that need to be put in there. That's a function of this board, and only this board can do it.
Okay. Anything further, anybody else?
Well, I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
I moved that we set a target of, to reduce the sum total of the manager's budget in the general fund by $1.5 million.
Okay, we have a motion.
That's negotiable.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, have a motion as well as a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to be able to support that motion because it's an arbitrary number. And like I said earlier, I think we're just saying we're going to cut services or we're going to cut people, and I'm not going to support it until I see what's being cut in here.
Okay, Commissioner Graham?
Well, $1.5 million would be the 2 cent increase in taxes.
300,000 more than that.
Pardon?
It would be 300,000 more than 2 cents.
Yeah, right.
It would be 2 cents is 1.2.
So it brings the budget down to 54 million something.
So if
Well, his
we,
recommended budget. That means another 1.5 million you got to cut out of this budget.
Each penny
And right now, that this
600,000.
budget, the way it's being proposed, the school.
so it'd be $300,000 that we'd have to find in cuts,
Yeah,
No, you'd have
over and above.
over and above the
Right.
the 2 cents.
I got a question.
Commissioner Booth?
We got a motion and a second. Help me vote for this. Tell me, where would you cut it? Please tell me.
That's the purpose of this board. Nobody
Well,
can tell
that's
you
what, that's the
before
reason.
the event happens.
Well, that's the reason I can't vote to support something that you can't answer for me.
Okay?
Well, it's early in the process
Well,
right
that's
now.
what-
We got 5 days now to look and see and make good solid decisions on what we need to do to find this money.
Mr. Chairman, and start the process before you make the cut.
That's,
I mean, I think we're getting the cart before the horse.
It's
yes.
a political
mean-
decision.
We got 6 months to deal with it.
Wow.
You're gonna wind up with an uncut budget if you don't fix a target and stick
Call
to
the
the
question.
target.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? 2-5, it failed. Continue on, Mr. Manager.
Well, let me say one more thing, Mr. Chairman. If you're not going to cut this budget, then this board should release me from having to attend these budget meetings because we are sitting here doing absolutely nothing.
I move we allow him to be excused.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Thank you, gentlemen.
You hadn't voted for a budget in 20 years, so ain't nothing gonna change.
Mr. Manager?
Mr. Chairman, page 19 is the general fund revenue summary page. So they all roll up under major revenue resources. You'll see $56.3 million is your total. In that, we're showing $919,000 in capital out of fund balance. We've restricted the use of fund balance to capital expenditures that we would consider to be one-time expenditures. So looking at your property taxes as you move down deeper into it, the property tax side, we're estimating $31.7 million. That is current year. Now, that includes the 2-cent increase there, so you'll see that number is up as compared to prior years. In prior years, you'll see also, we're estimating about $653,000 in prior year collections. The tax collections department has done a good job of keeping that number down, so you'll see it go down. And then interest and penalties is down a little bit because that's a factor of collecting the taxes to begin with. So on the property tax side, we're at 32.5 is what we're estimating. The amended budget this year is 32.8. Again, as we looked at those revenue numbers, and we shared with you, we saw some projections in there that we thought were a little over, and we've re-estimated those, and you have that large spreadsheet. If somebody's looking at it online, it's attached to the back of the PDF document, but it is in the front of your book. It is a spreadsheet that looks like that, that has all the revenue line items that we worked through, and so those are the details that make our projections about where we think the revenues will level up at. So on page 20, this moves into the sales tax. This drills down further as you talk about the different sales taxes. We went back and you'll see, and I talked about this in the manager's message, under the sales tax, the Article 39, the county 1%, as you get into changing these, the 39, the 40, 42, the 44 is not there. The 40 and 42 are the restricted capitals. The pieces that go to the schools, there's a 6% piece and a 40% piece. So of those, what we've projected, now you'll recall that what they told us over the years, this year, but we heard both from the Association of County Commissioners as well as the League of Municipalities, that the sales tax piece was going up by about 4%. We haven't seen that. In fact, we saw our sales tax turn down a little bit, and it's our impression, or my impression, that what we heard over the years, as things started to come back in the economy, you heard the Wakes and the Mecklenburgs and the larger communities in the center part of the state start to boom a bit. And everybody kind of heard that message that, hey, maybe we're out of this thing. And in parts of the other parts of the state, they are out of this thing. We're just not there yet. We saw an uptick in our sales tax, and what I think happened was everybody hoped that that was the case. They heard it, they saw it, they began to feel it, they went out and started spending a little more money, and then they realized it still isn't here yet, and we're still struggling. So the numbers turned back down. That's my impression of what's happened with the sales tax piece. But again, as we talked about in the message, when the state monkeys around with the sales tax formula, which they're the only ones who can do that, and they've spread that base a little more now. They've included certain pieces for labor. It just throws our projections completely off. The only way we're able to really look at sales taxes is to see the historical trends, because once you get the base settled down, then we can kind of see what it's doing based on what the folks tell us about the economy. But when they monkey around with the formula, which, it's good that they're spreading the base, but the problem is when they monkey around with that formula a little bit, it takes a while for it to settle back down for us to really get a decent projection. So we saw it turning down, but because of that expansion, we went back and said, let's look at what it was in 14-15 levels. So we're roughly projecting about 14-15 levels, roughly in that same amount, simply because we think there'll be some growth, even though right now it's turned down for us. We think that expansion that the General Assembly did will show some growth, and we hope that we're wrong and that it's greater than what it is. But we don't want to be too aggressive on it because we haven't been able to see that trend yet. So that's your sales and other tax piece. The intergovernmental revenues, you'll see those are the ones that come in from beer and wine tax, ABC distributions. The state and federal grants are the ones that jump up and down and around because they're based on monies that come in from other governmental entities, state and federal. So we're showing those a little bit down from the amended budget, a little bit more than what the original budget was, but roughly, again, somewhere around where the 14-15 levels were. Then as you move over on to page 21, you'll see the licensing fees and other general fund revenues. These are all your licensing fees and what we project on those. Now, this comes about by the specific pieces that you look to recover some of the fees for services that are not completely paid for by general fund. Like building inspection fees, those different things, animal control fees. You offset some of that general fund with those fees, and this is the fee piece that we've shown out there for you. Now, you'll see some blanks in here, and I think that was part of last year when you had an interim county manager in there, and you had a brand new CFO who came from the community college and had a different accounting, a different structure. In how they dealt with funds. So what they did was they took the best guess they could based on some historic trends, based on audited numbers. So that's why you'll see some of these, and they were rolled up into one number instead of distributed out. So that was a piece where we think there was a little bit of an overestimation, and we tried to correct for that. So from my perspective, it was new folks trying to look at something that was new for them. And nothing sinister about it. It's just it was what it was. So, but again, we've projected that out, and this is the big piece too, where you see the solid waste fees. That was 1.975 million in fiscal year 14-15 actual, and we've shown that no longer in the general fund because we've pulled it out. So that's why that drops a tremendous amount, and then we'll show you that as it rolls up on the other side. Obviously, investment earnings on the next page, there really isn't anything on the investment earnings.
Excuse me, Brian.
Yes, sir.
Randy, could you turn that air up a little bit? It's a little chilly in here today.
So, of course, revenue earnings are pretty sad anyway. But that's a function of the economy. We've talked about the appropriated general fund, appropriated fund balance on page 23. We'll go back into that more if you'd like to. But if you'll look, the big piece is on page 25. This is your summary of all the departments and where they were with 14-15 actuals, where they were with the original budget, where we are now currently with the amended budget, and then where we're recommended, and then you got some percentages there that show whether it was the change from the 15-16 original to what we've recommended, or from the amended this year to what we've recommended. So you'll see those changes. Also at the very bottom, we've tried to be as transparent as we can with this thing and compare apples to apples. So because we pulled the solid waste out, if you just look at general fund now comparing to general fund several years ago, you're not making a clear comparison because Solid waste is not in that anymore, so you got to add it back in. So you'll see down at the bottom where it says shown for comparisons. Economic development was one of those things that was coming out of a different piece. The other emergency services piece, that's the White Oak piece, and then the solid waste operations was originally in. So we've added those back in and put them in the right columns so that if you look at the very bottom, you can get a clear apples to apples understanding of where you are. Now, so what that shows is back in 14-15, your budget was $56.9 million in expenditures. Those were actual. Now, remember, actual is different than budgeted or projected. Those are actual audited numbers. So that was 56.9. In your original budget this year, you were at 58.5. Your amended budget for this year is 61.4. Our recommendation to you is 59.4. Looking apples to apples, okay? So any questions I can answer for you about the general fund expenditure side on the individual departments? Again, like I say, we've done a couple of things in this budget. We've tried to clearly show the cost as to where they go. We've taken out some of the costs that were piled into the governing board's budget, like insurance and bonds and those kind of things, and pulled them into a non-departmental budget. Because they're spread out across the entire county. They don't necessarily, when they're stuck in an individual department's cost center, it skews that. And I think traditionally that's kind of how you had it. But it got adjusted. And of course, you know, the way I present a budget, my philosophy on presenting a budget is different than a former manager's. So it takes a little while for everybody to get settled into how they like to see budgets. So I apologize that we have a little different way of doing things. But I think everybody has a different way. What we want to be able to do is historically be able to look back and see, are you up, down, left, or right? And we want things to be put in the right place so that at the end of the year, we can see in that line item, you know, what was spent and was it the right stuff. You don't want to be pulling, you know, office supplies out of your electric bill, because then it skews your numbers. You want to be able to look at those good trends and see what's happening. So that's why and we'll prepare this for you every year so you can see those year over year. So and then again on the page 26, these are your other governmental funds. That's like the 911 fund, the seized drug fund, the EMS, the fire rescue, and the tax reval. Those are outside the general fund, but we show them here so you can see them and be able to see those comparisons over the year. Yes, sir.
All right. When you look at the EMS tax fund, are we missing the increase that you recommended on the Bath Township? My number shows somewhere around $350,000.
Are you looking on the general fund side?
No, on page 26, under the EMS tax fund, we're showing in 15 $1,026,000, and in 17 we're showing $1,052,000. We're not including the tax increase, are we?
We're actually pulling it into the general fund because you're paying for it. The services being provided is being provided by a general fund department, the EMS department. So we're taking it and pulling it into the general fund. So you'll see it in the general fund. It's, where's that number? 383, 384.
Why wouldn't we pull the whole number in there? I mean, I'm a little bit confused.
It's a pass-through as far as the EMS tax fund goes. We'll receive the EMS taxes in that fund, but we'll show a transfer back to the general fund to actually pay.
But since it's a tax district, why wouldn't we show the whole number here and then show it going back? So we know what that number. I mean, if we pick up the town of Pantega and the town of Bath, and we do the increase, we're looking at close to $400,000. And to me, that's where I'm looking at it to be, because of the fact that it's a tax, EMS tax.
We can show it that way. It'll be a wash, though. It would increase revenues by that amount and increase expenses because we'll be transferring.
I was hoping that you said that we had missed it.
Unfortunately.
Okay. Going back to the sales tax.
Yes.
Can the state provide a breakdown based on the Dun Dun and Bradstreet SIC code where we know if it's coming from a hotel or if it's coming from Lowe's or?
I've never seen that detail.
Never seen that.
All we get is an amount that they give
Right.
us.
Which is what you cover expenses with, but I would think that it would help you on the forecasting side if you had some idea of where that was coming from.
I think they have that information. I've just never seen that information shared out. So
That's it.
Okay, before we move forward, it's a good time to take a 10-minute break.
What's in everybody, Chip?
All right, we're back in session. Mr. Manager, you may continue now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These are your general government departments that we're going to run through. First of all, on page 29 is the governing body. This is your budget, and you can see the way we've laid the budget sheets out. We do a little description about the department, what it's all about, what their function is. In yours, we showed the elected officials in their terms. In other departments, we'll show the org chart, so you'll see how the organizational chart lays out. We'll give you 14-15 actuals, what the original for this year was, what the amended budget was for this year, and what we recommended. And we break that down by personnel, benefits, operating, capital, and then a total. And then on the back page, you'll see the actual line item detail. So real quick on yours, going across the bottom, you'll see it's at 369,649. That is down from the 1.4 it was last year. The difference there is you'll see there was $512,000 worth of capital that was put in the amended budget, which is the purchase of the property, the $477,000 purchase that you had at First Bank, as well as the $20,000 of capital outlay for the building you bought that the attorney's in. For some reason, that was shown under here. Now, we've pulled that out, and we show that in debt service now.
Okay.
Where it should be. So you see that's why you have zero in your capital outlay. The operating piece, if you go back and look in 14-15 actual, you'll see that was $86,000, but this year we're recommended $232,000. The reason for that difference was back then the attorney was actually his own department. And we show it as a contract service underneath the board, because that's what it is. You also had 70, in the amended budget this year in operating, there's $779,500. That's all the bonds and the insurance that we actually pulled out and put in non-departmental. So that's how this all breaks down. If there are any questions regarding your budget, we'll be glad to address them for you.
Any questions?
Page 30, dues and subscriptions.
Yes, sir. Dues and subscriptions includes Association of County Commissioners, the COG, the Council of Governments, any of those large ones that you have.
Well, this year amended was 14, next year's recommended 31.
The difference in that is that we had some dues in subscriptions, like the COG, the Council of Governments, was underneath planning for some reason. And it really shouldn't be under planning because it's a county function. You're a member of the COG because of the county.
It was on the planning before, we had a planning department. That's the reason it was
That's why
like
it
it
was
was.
under. Gotcha.
But under land purchases, that's only First Bank, right?
That is the First Bank purchase, I believe it.
The 477. Okay.
And of course, what we'll do in the future is as we do those things, we won't route stuff through departments. We'll pull them out as project ordinances, and they'll be standalone, especially we'll have to do that with ones that cross fiscal years. We've seen where that can get you in a little bit of issue. So you start out and you put it in a project ordinance, and then you can track it from year to year and you know exactly where you are. So.
Continue.
Any more questions? Okay. Page 31 is county administration, county manager's budget. You'll see the org chart that shows that. That's where you'll see the risk manager position that's in there. That position is not filled yet. And you'll see the full-time positions where you show where you added that position. You approved that additional position in fiscal year 15, 16. So your numbers there From the amended budget, you're 479 to 446. There's no capital. The operating is from 120 to 50. And then there's the change in the benefits. You'll see that's where we've had an increase in health insurance, and there's been a retirement bump. So there was and I think y'all saw that coming out from the association. There was a slight increase on retirement from that side. So I'll be glad to answer any questions you have specifically on any of those line items. Trying to think of anything that stands out.
Page 32, telephone.
Yes, sir. We get stuck with all the telephones in the entire building, and that's one of the things that we couldn't tease it out as we got into the budget. We weren't able to tease it out enough. That's one of our projects as we go throughout the year, is to get the telephones back to where they should be in each department. Because right now, the county manager's budget pays for all the telephones, and there ought to be a piece that comes out of every budget that's in there. So we found that with a couple of things. Actually, it was.
Went from 1,800 to 10,000, 15, 16 amended.
Okay. But yeah, it was 1,800. They didn't, it wasn't budgeted right.
You mean 15, 16 amended wasn't budgeted right?
15, 16 amended,
Yeah,
or original.
14, 15, actual was 10, 6.
So 14, 15, so 15, 16 was just an aberration?
I think when you look at the 15, 16 numbers, they're all over the board.
It didn't get coded to the right place.
Okay. So the 14, 15 actual comes more in line with it? Okay.
And that's a lot of what we base some of our work off of. Any questions there?
Now, this budget assumes we fill the position of risk manager.
This budget assumes you do, because that position, what we've done with every position that we have, now this is one of the things for everybody to understand. One of the issues that we found in last year's budget, or in this current year's budget, was we believe what happened was that when they were looking at positions, they took a snapshot and said, okay, we think we know right today this is what the number is, and then they use that number going forward. And when you do that, you have some positions that aren't filled, and I think that's what we found out. Well, we know that's what we found out with some bad numbers in a couple of the departments. The sheriff's office had some bad numbers in their personnel, and of course, those numbers come from us. They come out of admin, so the departments don't give us those numbers. We give those numbers to them. So there was a mess up there. What we've done is gone back, and we have a spreadsheet. We've got a master spreadsheet of every employee that works for the county, and we plug that in, and we know exactly what the FICA is, we know exactly what the health insurance is, we know every bit of it, so we can tell you to the penny what that person is making and what that number is going to be. And we fully fund every one of those positions, because that's the only way we can do it. It allows for some flexibility, but if you don't do that, then you haven't fully funded it. And if you have a department that stays full the entire year, and you don't do that, and you're anticipating some fluctuation, then you're going to go in the hole. And what we would rather do is at the end of the year, be able to have some that rolls back and allow for some of that flexibility. So, but what we don't do is allow, again, we're trying to make sure that if you have money for utilities, that you're spending that out of the utility line item. And you don't move to another line item to try to spend it out of there because you got to buy utilities. Everything gets coded to that particular line item that it's supposed to be. You get a good historic trend on it. When you start moving things around, so we'll show a budget that's a little higher, and then we'll amend it and add some more money in there. And then as we go back into budget the next year, we can look at specifically those and make sure we see them. But we won't be looking to allow lapsed salary money to come down and fund other projects. They will be there for salaries.
Okay.
Finance is the same way. You'll see that laid out. There are in 15, 16, there are 7 positions that were there. One of them right now, there are 2. We've got 2 that are not filled. One is the assistant finance director position, and then one is the admin assistant position. Again, that was a position that was put in last year. That is a new position, but one that in the service expansion, we've shown you by cutting some other pieces within the finance department. What we'd like for you to do is consider that in the service expansion to fill that with a staff accountant position. I think there's some, as you've seen, where we really need to be strong is in our finance department. And that would help us. So if you look overall, that budget is at 579.5. The line item detail on the back, and Anita can answer any of those questions about it. It is her budget.
I just did want to mention one thing on positions, if I may. I actually have 6.5 positions. The payroll tech works half-time in finance doing payroll, and she spends the other half of her time helping with HR functions and doing benefits work and things like that.
We didn't show an audit this year. Any money for audit?
Yes.
In 15, 16?
We pulled that into non-departmental. Or did it go to you?
Actually, in the current year, I believe it's budgeted, it was budgeted in governing bodies.
It was.
Yeah, and we thought it was more appropriate to pull it out of the governing body so we can put it in the finance budget for next year.
It says it showed it back in 14, 15, then it went out, now it's going back.
We're trying to get things back to where they should belong.
Well, this interim manager that we had moved 1.2 million over to the governing body. I mean, which I didn't understand, but.
Different philosophies and different.
Our budget last year was somewhat of a funky
They're saying the same
chicken.
thing about me over the city right now. Don't know where they put money last year. So,
Commissioner Buzzio, did you have something?
Yes, Anita, is it the administrative assistant and the assistant finance director positions you want to abolish and convert that into one staff accountant?
Actually, no, I really desperately need to fill that assistant finance director position. And the administrative assistant position, it's been vacant for quite a while. We have been utilizing a temp through a temp service to do a little bit of work for us. But I have to say that the manager staff, Katie and Rashonda, are very gracious, and they help me anytime that I need administrative help, which is pretty rarely, I think. But what I would like to do is take that administrative assistant position and turn it into a staff accountant, and I've been able to do that at a zero cost to the county by recommending to bring in the assistant finance director at a lower rate of pay, and also drastically reducing my part-time salary line item. I feel like our department's in desperate need of additional technical expertise to help with a lot of projects.
Okay, thank you.
Based on comments that we had from our auditor this year, we sure need to have that person.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
And I would say that we always need to have somebody to back up in case Anita decides that she needs to move someplace.
Right.
Heaven help us if that happens, but I think we've seen the
Let's don't even
problems.
talk about
I
that.
think we've seen the problems created when you don't have a chief financial officer in place.
All right.
I got one thing that I don't, the professional service audit, $55,000. And in 14-15, it was 48.3. What is that 55 going to be used for?
That is our annual audit fee.
That is
You
what we
actually-
pay the people down in Belhaven?
That's correct.
Okay, all right,
Correct, yes, sir.
all right, that's it.
So your next page, page 35 is Human Resources, and Dolores is here. If you have any any detailed questions on it, you'll see her outlay here. There are 3 positions there. It's actually 3.5 because she has a position. It's 2.5 right now. that Anita was saying, the half position they share. So, so she's got the HR manager, the assistant, and then the human resource tech. You'll see that her budget is essentially flat. This budget was actually up underneath the manager. It was under the assistant county manager back in 14-15, so there was no budget for it. It was pulled out and essentially established last year. So the only real increase there is simply if you look at the personnel, the COLA that was put in and the health insurance and those changes. Overall, it's flat. I mean, if you look at the operating, it's lower down, and then the benefits are up just a little bit because the benefits are up as they are. So, but again, this proposed budget also fully funds that other position, although it's not filled yet. We do show it as a funded position because it's an authorized position. Any questions on that?
Okay.
Tax assessor. Bobby is here. If you have any specific questions, you'll see the layout of the org chart. The number of positions there are holding steady. The numbers are down from the original budget to from 839 to 738. You'll see in 14-15, that was a huge number. That was because the two departments were combined at the time, so you had tax assessor and tax collector you had the tax administrator model, and then you broke it out in 15-16, so you have two departments there. So any big items in there you might want to discuss, Bobby can certainly answer those for you. Again, it is down from it's essentially flat, or from what we're projecting, we're holding it flat. And again, that one's kind of hard to look at because you can't look back historically because it was combined in another department. But all these positions are fully funded, and we think we've covered all the pieces for the need.
Commissioner Buzzio.
I want to go back to this, then I have a question also on tax. And human resources, we have one vacancy currently?
We currently have one vacancy.
And do we have any vacancies in the tax assessor's office?
We do not have any vacancies in tax assessor. No, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Any questions on the detailed sheet for Anita or for Bobby?
Where is it, the money that we're spending on faculty? Is it in, what line item is it on? Or did you put it?
It's under computer software.
Computer software and support.
Okay.
Yeah, and remember, that was, it doesn't track very well because it wasn't put in a project ordinance, so it's hard for us to follow it. So it jumps around a little bit. I think with that last budget amendment that you made, or the last budget amendment that moved money within the department, so you didn't allocate any new money. You just moved some money within the department, paid the remaining piece of that. So there's no, the only piece that's left is just a maintenance piece. You've paid the total startup installation ready to go. Now you just got maintenance each year that you're paying.
What would the maintenance be? The maintenance for this budget, what line would it be?
That's under computer software and support.
It's all consolidated together there?
It's part of that 132.5.
Okay.
So the 132.5 is what we should be seeing, where's Bobby? Each year going forward, somewhere in that ballpark figure.
Could be a little extra, but I think that will be right. I went back to one of my numbers today. Farragut is all paid out, the Denali is paid, Seaside is paid for their conversion, so all that's been taken care of.
That was it. Okay, Chairman.
Under the tax collector piece on page 39, Wynn's here if you have any specific questions. There's 7 positions there. His budget recommended going forward is 581. That's down from both the original and the amended. And you'll see, of course, that in 14-15 it was it was rolled up into the assessor's office in the administrative model. So it is a new department. The line item details on the back will give you the detail on the specific line items. One of the changes that we saw in there was on the tax foreclosure piece. We dropped a bit from 115 to 90. That was where you had the Zacchaeus.
The what?
There's Zacchaeus. It's the contract attorney firm that handles your foreclosures. And, you know, you had that big, massive catch-up that they got when you started with them. And they've done a good job, but you get to the point where there's not a tremendous amount. So you'll see that there.
Isn't it time to start looking at this contract again?
2 years is what Wynn
I
says.
think it was done right before I started commission.
We need to look at it.
What'd you tell me, Anita, about that legal advertising? How things jumped all around from 1,000 to 25,000?
It's just moving the line item from the tax assessor's department to the tax collector department.
So it was legal advertising used to be in the tax assessors, now it's in the tax.
And if you don't believe that a whole page ad in the newspaper is not an expensive ad, it certainly is. And of course, that's why, as you'll recall, 2 years ago at the General Assembly, there was that big, huge fight about whether you could post it on the website, and of course, the folks from the representing the newspaper association said, no, you still got to put it in the paper. And I guess, you know, but so that's a big piece of that.
So it's still required under the state law?
Yes, sir.
Gwen, I have a question. Do you have any vacancies?
No, sir, I do not have any vacancies.
Fully staffed?
Fully staffed, yes, sir.
Okay, continue.
Court facilities on page 41. This is the piece of the budget that handles the court facility side of it. There is some restricted money that comes in from court facilities fees. I think you heard us talk a little bit about that. You heard the court talk about that. It's roughly about $125,000 a year that you get from, that's statutorily required. Anytime you go to court, you pay a fee. Part of those court fees go to facilities fees, and that's to help offset the cost, because it doesn't pay for all of it. It doesn't come anywhere close to paying for all of it. It helps offset a piece of that provides that allows the county to provide that facility and upkeep of that facility and all those things. So in this, you'll see those costs. On the back page, you'll see that in this, there are a couple of new items. There are a couple of things we want to show you. On the courthouse operations, there is $12,500 that we put in this budget. We recommended putting in there, and that is a line item that the clerk would have essentially be able to use to address specific issues that they had, whether it be furniture, a piece of furniture, or whether it be a small appliance or something over there that they feel is a specific need they need to go ahead and take care of. We also include in that, there was a change in the formula previously under utilities, and it still shows 2/3 on there. We were charging 2/3 of the utilities of the building to court facilities, or we were using the money we were figuring 2/3 of it. And it was simply broke down because there were 3 floors, and 2 of them were used by court facilities, and one of them was the jail. But Christina looked at that, and essentially when you have a jail that's in the basement and it's working 24 hours a day, it's probably using a little more than only 1/3 of the utilities. So we readjusted that based on her recommendation to 50%. So it's covering 50% of the cost there.
Let me ask this question. The utilities of $83,000, is that water, sewer, as well as electric?
Yes, sir. That's everything. So double that number is what the cost of that facility is a year.
Gas.
That's the estimate.
I'm assuming that's for the jail too. I mean, it covers everything over there.
Well, no, that 83 is the piece that comes out, is the half piece. So if you just double it, if you double that, that's what the entire facility is estimated to cost in utilities, which would include the jail.
Is there any way to find out whether the court facilities we can increase their proportion of, I mean, it seems like to me, everything else goes up and there's this, look like a straight line.
It's a statutory piece. You'd have to get the General Assembly to agree.
Oh, well, forget it.
What's the,
Brian, the contract services security,
Contract services is the security.
Yeah.
And the capital, the capital repairs, we are showing,
269.
we are showing 269, 275. That is the courthouse roof. We placed it under there, and you'll see in our last paragraph, it says, the court facilities budget this year does reflect the estimated 269, 275 courthouse roof repair project. This project will likely be moved into a project ordinance, but it's listed here because it's directly related to the court facilities. And the other piece of that is, if we get a good nod from you on this one, or once, obviously, that's something that's got to be done. We've got to replace that courthouse roof. We're going to show it here. Once the budget, if you so choose to continue with that and you approve the budget, Christina's going to go ahead and start this year on the engineering piece of it. They've already done the work. You already did that earlier with REI to look at the condition of it and to do the estimate and all those things. Once you agree that this is what you're going to do, she's going to start this year with the engineering work to go ahead and get the design done and be ready to bid it. And then, so it'll pull out into a project ordinance, roll over into the next fiscal year. That additional 276 will go in there, or 269 will go in there, and you'll start the construction in the next fiscal year, in the new fiscal year.
When you say design work, explain that to me.
The REI goes, it's not just pull off what you got and throw down new stuff. They'll go in and design that roof to make sure that it is
You get a piece of that money.
well, it's the engineering fees.
Yeah.
But they'll also inspect it. They'll make sure that it's done exactly the way it's supposed to. They'll make sure that the warranty is right. They'll come back and inspect and make sure it's signed off on and correct. Because what we want to do, and it costs you a little bit more money up front, but that's okay. Because once you do it and do it right, you can get away from it for 20 years, 25 years. I mean, it's a 20-year, 25-year roof, and if it's put on right and done right and the workmanship is right, then it's guaranteed for a certain number of years, and then we don't have to go back and mess with it again. They'll come back and fix it. So that's the advantage of having somebody like REI. We use these guys when I was in Granville County. That's exactly what we did. We were nickel and diming ourselves to death every year, 10,000 here, 15,000 there to patch roofs and do this. And what we said to the board, we're going to spend some money up front, but then you're going to be able to get away from them. And you'll fix one roof this year, and then you'll go a year or go another year, fix another roof, and then you're 20 years before you get back at those roofs again. And we'll bring that piece to you. They've given us that 10-year plan, how we do the immediate needs you have on our roof, on all our different roofs, and then when we need to replace the others. Because again, it's one of those things, you can patch it and patch it, but you just get worse and worse, and it costs you more and more.
So actually, the roof will actually be put on in 2017.
No, sir, it'll be, well, the 16-17 budget, after July 1 is when,
Okay.
is when we,
All right.
is when we would bid it. But between now and July 1, they'll be putting the RFP together, or the the request for proposals, and they'll put all the design work together so that it's ready to go for construction.
Brian, out of that 269,000, was there, to replace the roof, does that take in consideration that once they get the old roof off, replacing rotten wood and things like that?
There
You
is.
figure that in, that's what I'm asking.
There is a little bit of contingency in there, but the other piece of it is I fully budgeted the 269, and the 269 included about $20,000, I think, for engineering and inspection and all those kind of things. I went ahead and fully funded that because of anticipating an issue. Christina's going to go ahead and spend money she has in her current budget to do the engineering work and to start the project. So hopefully, when it's all said and done, we'll be plus on that, that we won't have spent it all. But the problem is, you get into a roof like that, you may have to take off some decking, and you may have to do some things. Obviously, there's a lot of issues around with the fascia and the guttering system. And if you don't do the guttering system right, then you're just wasting your money. You got to do it right and get the water off of it. So that's one of the things that it pays to have an engineer do it and do it right.
So what you're saying is you fully funded it, so we don't have to worry about no change orders.
That's our hope.
That gives me heartburn.
I wouldn't say
So it only gives me heartburn too. And again, that's why.
And I got some roadways.
And again, that's why you may spend a little bit more
I'm
upfront with the
fine with it.
engineer to look at it.
As long as I don't get no
Design it.
surprises, I'm fine with it.
We're trying to minimize all the surprises we have. Yes, sir.
When Marty was in here the other day, he gave us a presentation, and I also took a tour of the courthouse, and I assume other people have. Is this 50,000 here going to go towards some of the things he was raising?
It is. We put $50,000 in there to do some work. Christina shows in her service expansion proposal some engineering work and a project to go in and redo the lighting, to do an engineering study on the lights to figure out what kind of lights you need. Obviously, you go in and replace lights, you're going to save money utility-wise, but to look at that and determine what best lighting they need, and to do that if you find money to fund it, because we didn't fund it. We didn't have money to fund it.
What about a plan to, other things, that sinks that need to be repaired, the vent system, which looks like crud's growing out of it, all things like that, plan in place?
Multiple-year project.
Okay. I have one other question. The cleaning contract, do we have a cleaning contract on that? Is it for all the county buildings?
We do. We have a cleaning contract for all the county buildings, and it's with two different companies, and that is part of what we will do in this upcoming year, is look at those and as they are available, rebid those and do some work on those.
Because
we
from
recognize there's some issues there.
From a cleaning perspective, when I was walking through it, leaves a lot to be desired.
Cleaning contracts need to be rebid, I would say, at least every couple of years, just to keep folks honest. I mean, it's just human nature. You get the contract, and you do it right to start with, and then you slowly.
Just like the banisters, you
It's my
can see.
understanding that they don't actually have a contract, they're just
Month to month.
employed. Is that?
I don't
Cleaning
know.
contract.
That's what it is, month to month.
Month to month. I mean, it's the strangest thing I ever heard when I heard it. I mean, when Jerry told me, I said, "Oh, I've never known that before." I
But
thought
it's
you had
easier
a
for us to,
contract
like,
with
I thought we had a contract with them.
No,
but, okay.
we don't.
Oh, we don't.
Well, then we'll immediately go to work on putting that out for.
It's like the banisters, you can ski on them. I mean, they're greasy.
Was that, it's that substance they put on it? Because I came down one day, I had a white shirt on, and I got in my office, and I looked at all this black stuff on my shirt, and I looked all around my office trying to find, where did I get this stuff from? And I messed up another shirt like that. And one day, I got to the top of the steps and went down. When I got to the bottom, I looked, and there it was. Because when I go down the steps, I hold the rail, and all the way down, I'm taking that, whatever it is they got on that, those rails, it comes into my shirt.
So assurances, we're going to look at the contract.
We are, absolutely. Christine and I have actually talked about that. But again, not that there's any belief that, I mean, I think everybody clearly recognizes that this is a multi-year program, multi-year projects to get the courthouse back to where it needs to get, as well as a lot of our buildings. It's going to take something. They didn't get in the shape they got every night, and it's going to take us a while to get them back to where they need to be. And it's going to take some money. It's going to take some capital money to do that.
At least we can start. Let's start.
Yes, sir.
And some things, like the sinks, we've replaced, I believe, 8 sinks this year, so we've been starting the process.
They must be in the ladies' room, because I haven't seen them.
No, they're down in the basement.
Are they down in down in the basement?
Honestly,
Frank,
the ones
wait,
that were
to be able to
replaced
declare.
were worse than the ones that are still there. You can believe that, so.
If you really seen what was in that basement,
HB2 joke right now.
We won't go there. We won't go there. These guys that are running for re-election are not going to go there. My comment would be on the 50,000. Hold that until we find out what the price of that new roof is going to be, because we may have to move some of it over there. I'm sort of like Ed. I think that's going to be more.
I think I heard at the very beginning that roof was going to be about $205,000 to replace it, and so you've added probably $55,000 to that to cover incidental.
They added in some contingency in the estimate that the engineers gave us, and then I fully funded it based upon how much work Christina was going to go ahead and do ahead of time.
And
So-
that was after they had a lift and they went up and did a close inspection. 205 you had heard was more just a ballpark based on square footage and the type of roof that was there.
Right.
The increase is actually after REI brought in a boom lift and went in and actually touched and felt the surrounding wood and got a much better idea. And they actually took core samples of the roof as well, so they had a much better idea of what will be required to really repair the roof like it should be repaired.
Well, I'm just as sure as I'm sitting here that those contingencies will be eat right on up. I'm just as sure of it as I'm sitting here.
Okay.
The next is Board of Elections, and Kelly's here. If there are any questions on the detailed side about that, there have been some changes that she's had regarding how they pay poll workers. So you will see that actually on her personnel side, they're down. She's down overall from the original budget and only just slightly above the 14-15 actual. So she can answer any of those detailed questions you may have. It's pretty straight.
Next year's election cycle is down. The current year that we're in is our big year because we have 3 elections this year, but next year, even though it's the presidential, we only have 1 election, so it's naturally gonna fall, and then the coming year will go back up again.
Does the county have to eat the cost for this June coming up, or does the state give us?
All elections are funded by the county, so anything the legislature does, because there still was some talk about having an August election for legislative districts, if those districts were found unconstitutional, they are never funded by the state, they're always funded by the county.
Unfunded mandate.
Yeah, that you love
Pass
it.
me down. What about your machines? I know, is it time for you to start looking at new machines, voting machines?
Technically, yes, because the life expectancy on the machines, we're getting to the end of them. But I'm telling you right now, we know we need to drag our feet on making that purchase because it'll be a $500,000 purchase. We were able to get
Grant
grants
money.
the last time to fund this one, and just with the way the legislature's looking at it, they've gone away from direct record machines, which are the touch screen. They want to go back to paper, which thank goodness we saw that coming when we purchased these. I like paper. Doesn't matter what happens to the machine, I can always go back and hand count things. But until the state and right now there's only 1 vendor that's certified in the state. Over the next 5 years maybe, we're gonna see that open back up again, and I think there's gonna be a lot more choices for the county. So my opinion as director of elections is we need to wait until we're almost forced to replace that equipment now. I mean, there are counties that are putting away money and saving it up to not get hit all at one time with that purchase, but we don't need to make that purchase right now.
Good,
We're not supposed to.
thank you.
And the machines are functioning well. We have had, we had a recount of this last primary election with county commissioners, and both candidates gained one, but it was simply because of voter intent. They had circled names and not actually filled in the ballot correctly. So we're not seeing any decline in the way that the machines are functioning. So we are having a little bit more repair work to them. We'll have a read head go out occasionally, but it's still nothing that I'm very comfortable with what we're using now.
Thank you.
Okay. We can move forward.
Next on page 45, you have Register of Deeds Office. You'll see that her budget is $312, which is actually below the 14-15 actual numbers. I think the big change on that one was the automation restoration piece. As we discussed that, I think it was funded a little high last year, and we've actually, there isn't any funding this year for it because she was saying that they were good right now with that piece. They would probably come back next year with some additional work, but this year it was okay.
Okay.
Any questions on that one? Okay. Maintenance buildings and grounds is on 47, page 47. Again, this is Christina's budget, and you can see in there that of some things we did list in there. The demolition of the old county home is one of the projects at $275. We also included $50,000 for a county facilities needs study, so we could start looking at facilities. We could also look at the First Bank building to determine how you were going to use that and what was the best way to do that. We talked a little bit about at the planning retreat. We talked about that long-term study and looking at things and how we were going to deal with things. So this is the first piece of that. But that's where you see that little bit of a bump, 275 in capital. And if there are any questions in detail, Christina can answer that.
Yeah, I got a couple. When you come up with that figure on demolishing the old county home, how did you get that figure?
How did we get that figure, Christina?
The number originally, I think a couple of years ago, was at like 200,000, and that was based on estimates received at the time, and it was increased due to asbestos. The information that I had been given originally was that all the asbestos had been removed from that facility, but when we actually pulled the reports that the county had, only a small portion of the asbestos had been removed. The only asbestos that had been removed was for the insulation on the HVAC piping. So that's down in the crawl space.
So we actually don't know if that 275 will do away with it.
Do not know, but based on the other numbers and talking, we have not put out a formal RFP for it. But once we do that, based on conversations I've had with asbestos removal companies and local demolition contractors, I believe that 275 is covered.
You got one other one. Professional service engineering. Why is that $70,000?
That's the additional 50 that I put in there. Christina had 25 or 20. What'd you have, Christina? 20 or 25? 20. She had 20, and I added the 50 for the space needs study so that we could start doing the long-term planning for the
Gotcha.
facilities.
Okay.
That's that additional 50.
I've got a question on the old county home. Is this a critical piece of real estate that the county owns? I mean, can we not put it out there and see if we can sell it with the building on it? See what kind of offer we'd have?
I guess you could. I mean, it's right adjacent to the health department, and there is a cemetery on it. I'd refer back to any of the other commissioners. Y'all got more history on it than I do.
If you can find somebody foolish enough to buy that building, I'd let them have it.
Well, I'm just asking because the commissioners are being accused of being in the real estate business, and so, I think we've got some other properties that might be more critical for us to hold on to, and because of the location, I think it's property that if we could find somebody to give us something for it, it might be. There's always somebody out there that'll take a building as is if the price is right.
How large is the property? Does anybody know?
Pardon?
How many acres?
It's not all that much.
We gave it away and we gave it back to them.
I don't think we could give it away. First of all, I don't think the property's worth $275,000. My own personal opinion. And it's somebody going to go in there and buy the property and then spend $275,000 on it before they can even think about developing it. I don't think you got a chance of anybody doing that.
You never know until you ask.
That's right, yes.
That's
Never
true.
know until you ask.
That's true. But ain't nobody in Beaufort County going to do it.
Okay. Well, I guess the other question is, can we postpone, if we can't sell it or something?
I think obviously that's a decision the board needs to make as to whether, back in your capital budget at one time when you talked about some of the long-term things you want to do, that was one of the top priorities was to go ahead and get rid of that, demolish that, clean up that area. I think you've got to do something to it, whether if you don't take it down and clean it up, we've got to go spend some money on it to board it up, get it so there's not the liability that is. We got folks kicking around in there, sleeping there, and doing those kind of things. So
Well, the original intent of the property was to put the Mideast Commission over there.
Yep.
And then the historical people from Raleigh got involved in it. And it's some kind of historical value to the building. I don't know. Have you even talked to them about whether you can tear that down or not?
well, you can always tear it down. You just can't use state or federal money to do it. It's kind of like the VOA piece. What they may want you to do is document it, take pictures of it, do those kind of things, and then you might be able to use state money or a grant.
At one time, the Mideast Commission was very interested in having their offices there on that piece of property, and we were very interested in doing it. And I would still be nice to be able to do that, but I don't know about $275,000 material building.
What was, I mean, did you look back in the previous budget? I mean, I was asking Jerry a few moments ago. At one time, it was $100,000.
To tear it down?
Yeah.
I think that was before they found out about the asbestos.
Yeah,
I think the
right.
understanding
Yeah, it
was
was.
there wasn't
Okay.
any asbestos. It had all been
Okay.
taken care of.
I got you.
And unfortunately, that jacks the price up big time.
Okay.
And
Continue.
it is, I mean, all the tile out there, I'm sure, is asbestos and mastic.
Ain't no copper in it, that's for sure.
Ron, do we have an estimate if we want to board it up?
It'd probably take you $10,000-$15,000, maybe $10,000.
Be cheaper to put a fence around it?
People climb the fence.
Put some
People climb the
concertina
fence.
wire around it.
You can't burn it. You can't burn it. You can't burn it, can you?
What about the
What,
fire department?
what, our conversation about that, Christina's and I's conversation about that was, if you're not gonna take it down, then we need to go on the inside and board it up from the inside. We need to paint the plywood, and we need to trim the bushes around it, so it doesn't look horrible. I mean, you can make a abandoned building look decent by boarding it up and painting the boards, brick color or black or something. And then trimming the bushes and making it look presentable. And we need to do that if we don't tear it down.
Well,
Wouldn't want to.
if we do that, let's put a for sale sign up after we do it. Get it looking nice. I'm serious. You guys laugh. I'm serious
serious
about
too.
that.
There's also been discussion about burning the building, but before you could burn the building as a training exercise for the college, all of the asbestos needs to be removed.
Yeah.
And then once that takes place, at one time, the city was willing to allow that to take place because that is especially to be able to burn in the city limits, but they were hoping to use it as a training facility. So that's something that can also be looked at. But this is the effort to demolish and to haul the waste away.
Okay.
Page 49 is your debt service out of the general fund. This gives you a summary of all your debt that's general fund related. And of course, we subscribe to the statutes regarding that, where you're not allowed to exceed 8% of your appraised value for property that's subject to taxation. So as of that, when you apply that formula, you have a legal debt margin of $451 million. Not that you're anywhere close to that, nor do you want to get anywhere close to that, but you do have a legal debt margin of $451 million. Looking down further, you'll see that under your tax-supported 10-year debt payout ratio is 73.5%, so that means that you're paying out 73.5% of your debt over the next 10 years. That's a ratio that lets you know you're not back-end loading your debt. You're not doing funny things like paying interest only. You're strategically taking that down, and you're paying off 70% of your debt within 10 years. You see the numbers, the general fund debt per capita, and then the GO debt per capita. The table you have shows the principal and interest of what is included in the fiscal year 16-17 budget. The school, $1.6 million in principal and $596,000 in interest. You've still got the Allied Health Building at the community college that you're paying on through a USDA loan, $69 in principal and $106 in interest. Then you still have the energy savings installment contract, $143,000 in principal, $38 in interest, and then the installment purchase on the 3rd Street building right adjacent, and that's $11,009 and $8,000 in interest. We actually looked at that one to see if we could pay that one off early. However, in the contract that was approved in the purchase, you're not allowed to prepay that one. So your total debt service for the upcoming fiscal year is $1.89 million in principal and $748,000 in interest. Now, on the next page, you'll see all of your debt, and it listed out of what the debt is, what the balance is as of certain dates and what the balance is running out each fiscal year. So on 6/30/2020, you'll see what the debt is, and you see that stepping down over the years. Also on page 51, you'll see when the bond was issued, or when the debt was issued, when the final pay date is, what the debt actually is, and then the payments for the next 3 years, what the interest rate is, and what type of bond it is, whether it's GO or installment purchase. So that gives you a good snapshot of what kind of debt you have for the county. Any questions on that? Page 53 is your non-departmental. This is the new department that was set up to handle the things that had traditionally, or the pieces that apply to a bunch of departments overall. The state unemployment insurance, that was stuck in somebody's budget. It really applies to everybody, so it ought to be paid under a non-departmental. The one thing that's new in here is the FLSA law impact. If you've been seeing that, the Department of Labor just recently released their final rule on the Fair Labor Standards Act. Now, that went through the rulemaking process and the hearing on it, and they tweaked it a little bit before they put it out. What it reads now is, I think, 47,000, 47 something, 47.5. 47 flat. Any employee that makes less than 47,000, makes 47,000 or less, has to be paid overtime. You can't. They can't be exempt employees, no matter what their job is, no matter what they do, no matter any of that. It has to be. They have to be exempt, non-exempt employees. So they have to be paid overtime. That number was originally higher when they first proposed the rule, and then there were some changes. The rule's been published now. What it means for us is that we've got to look at that, so we put a little bit of money in there to do a pay and class study, because we need to understand where we are in our payroll and classification plan as we look at that and as we adjust to that. And then there's also a little bit of money in there to compensate for that, because if you have people now that are at that point that have been exempt, and now you've got to make them non-exempt, then we would need some money in there to fund that. So that's what that is. Any questions about that? And we put it in there in anticipation of that. You'll hear that what we understand. I mean, there's a running blog about that with the School of Government talking about it, that the Congress has said, or certain parties in Congress have said, they're not going to allow it to happen. They're going to pass a bill that stops it. And the Obama administration said, doesn't matter, we'll veto whatever you do. So there's a running battle going on with that. But we believe, and what everybody's told us, is that it is going to be implemented. So we need to be prepared for it and be ready for it.
Is it possible, is it possible that if it passes, that we had to go back and pay, a few years ago, I think it was law enforcement, we had to go back and pay them their salary where they had been doing overtime, and we've been giving them time off. I know we got it, and I was working. Is that possible that they do?
I don't think so. This one moves forward. It sets the rule and moves forward, so it's not looking retrospective. Then on this, you'll see the insurance and bonds. We also pulled the IT support out, the county-wide IT piece that we contract with them to handle all the departments. Instead of trying to break that down by department and share that, we put it under a non-departmental so that it's shared across all because that service is shared across all of them.
Go ahead.
On the IT support software, I assume some of that money goes to purchasing software, is it?
It does. It goes for licenses. It goes for upgrading our licenses, keeping our licenses current with like our Office 365, all the Outlook and all those things we have to have concurrent licenses on, as well as any service that they're providing for us. We buy a block of hours from them, and we charge against that. And
What about the support portion of it?
the support, yes, that's part of it.
Well, I guess that my question would be, is should we look at, are we saving money by outsourcing it? I guess that's my question.
I think we are, because I don't think, unless you, and there are two thoughts on that. If you're going to get into that business, you got to ramp up and really get into that business. We chose to do that when I was in Granville, and we had 4 people. 4 IT people. We maintained all our servers in-house, we did all that stuff, and we had 4 staff having to do all that. I think you're getting a good value because you've got about 4 people or 5 people that are doing that, and you're looking after the stuff for us. I think we're getting a good deal, unless you want to jump into that and have to ramp staff up and then handle that.
Not right now, just. if it's worth it then from a financial perspective.
And it's one that once we get through that contract again, we'll put it out for RFP and we'll get competitive bids on it and do those kind of things. Postage is another one of those. I think it was either postage was always in the energy line item or in the finances line item. So, and then it was in mine actually, because you would see it go up and see it come back down as they would adjust them off. So we actually moved that out into a non-departmental where we will charge against that. Now we track that, because as they run it through the machine, they know exactly who it goes to, which department it goes to. However, what was happening was it was all being charged to the county manager's line item. So you saw this number dip way down, your budget was gone, and then as they put the money back in from each of the departments back over, it would come back up. So it's just kind of a nightmare. What we're going to do is put it in a non-departmental to charge against it. We'll know everybody that's using it, but we won't have to reallocate back and forth and move money between budgets to do it. So it's a time-saving piece for us.
So on that number, if you go back and look in the finance department, we used to have $48,000 in there for munis. So is that in this 123 now? Okay. So that's an all-inclusive, pretty well for everything?
Tax software, that is in the
Okay.
tax department. But yeah, the financial software is used by all departments, because they all should be looking at their budget numbers.
Right.
And managing their budgets, so we put that in the non-departmental.
They're also doing their purchase orders
That's right.
on that too, right?
Exactly.
And they are, and we've got everybody set up now. Everybody wasn't previously set up, so everybody now can get in and see there and watch their stuff. So it makes it more accountable, and we've got folks who are very eager to do that and to look after their own stuff. So they're doing a great job. So that's your non-departmental. Of course, also with there was some money that was put in there. It used to be in the commissioner's budget, I think, either that or under my budget for the employee appreciation loan. So that's under the non-departmental, because that's spread across the entire. Transfers to other funds. This is where you see where we move money from the general fund because of statutory requirements, or because it's a multi-year accounting. Tax reevaluation, that's where you're moving money out of the general fund into your tax reval fund. You do that 1/8 of it every year, and then you have enough money sitting aside to do your reevaluation, and you've got enough money, or you will have enough money projected to do that entire project. The transfer to economic development was where it used to be outside as an economic development commission, and it was still in there this year. It just didn't get changed. We've moved it, as I alluded to in the message, to try to get it where it needs to be, because it's out of general fund and it needs to be under general. And then the transfer to capital projects, that's that $200,000 for land purchase. So. And then again, you'll also see where we pull out the solid waste piece. Any questions on that? Page 55 is contingency. You'll see in there that there's a statutory requirement that you can't have any more than 5% listed in contingency for the entire fund. So you could actually, based on that, $2.8 million is, you could do $2.8 million statutorily in contingency, but we held it to, we're showing $25,000. That is what you had last year. You'll see the two pieces where that was spent on the radio communication study in this current fiscal year, and there's no money left in that general contingency. So those are the general government cost centers. Any questions, additional information you may need about those? Anybody have anything? The next one is human services, and this is social services and health department, and mental health and area transportation. And I'm going to ask Sonia to speak to you about those. And the reason I'll say that is DSS and health department, as you well know, have a lot of different funds. They have federal funds, they have state funds, and they have line items where they're getting 60% back, they're getting 50% back. So the budgets are really, really complicated. I know enough about them to get in trouble, and so I won't. So they're really good at what they do. I can assure you of that. They are moving monies. Commissioner Belcher, you'll appreciate this. It's just like the school system where you're trying to maximize other people's money before you spend your own. And I can assure you that that's what they're doing. They're moving people and they're using money for programs that they can use them for every chance they can to maximize federal or state money before they have to spend local dollars. So she's here to answer any of those questions that you have. Again, we show those as fully funded based on the estimates that we get or that they get. So if you hit those estimates, then you're going to spend that money, but if you don't, you're not going to. And I think, Tanya or Jeff, I think Commissioner Waters asked the question earlier tonight about, in general, when you look at the cost, I know Jim says it's about 1 to 3, or 1 out of every $3 is local from the health department. 42%. And for your side, it's about what?
About 39%.
About 39% local. So, and of course, these are mandated services. These are statutorily required services that you have to provide, and you have no control over the eligibility. The federal government sets the eligibility, the state sets the eligibility, and as you'll recall, back years ago when we did the Medicaid swap, which got you out of that business, thank goodness, because that was exponentially going up, and you had no control over it. You were having to pay 10% of it no matter what, and you had no control over the eligibility. But you're not in that anymore. But there is a piece that you do still cover. Real quick, the administrative side, as you've seen, there were some issues with, not locally, but more statewide, there were some issues with the food and nutrition services about getting the food stamp piece processed quickly enough, where the federal government put the state under a mandate to say you've got an administrative letter that if you don't get this to if you don't get it to 95% timeliness, then we're going to start taking administrative money away from you and not paying you for the admin piece of it to do it, which is their way of whacking you on the head and saying, since you're not doing what you want, since you're not doing what we want you to do in a timely manner, we're going to take the money away from you and either make you spend local dollars or it's just going to get worse. So our folks have done an absolutely fantastic job of keeping ours where they need to be. I think we've talked with y'all about that a little bit. They talked with you at the planning retreat about it. Here's a piece that is structurally just messed up because it's about when you turn the application in, not if you turn a complete application in. The clock starts if this is maybe exaggerating a little bit, but if I fill out my name and give you a couple pieces of information and fill out maybe one of the however many questions and drop it in the drop box, which we're required to do, then the clock starts ticking. And if I can't get a hold of you and you won't reply to me, if we don't get you food stamps by a certain date, then we get dinged because we were not compliant with it. So it's about the mechanism, the timing mechanism is wrong. I think our folks will tell you they're willing to work however they need to and would work for the reasonable, whether it was 48 hours, 72 hours. Once I get a completed application, if that's when the clock starts, then we're willing to, we can hit that deadline. But when you don't have a completed application, you're constantly trying to fix the problem and you get dinged on it, it's just not fair. So it's structurally messed up. And they've had some conversations, the Association of County Commissioners has had some conversations in D.C., and I think they've got the ear now of the USDA that structurally there's an issue there. But I've talked too much. Go ahead, sir.
I should go to the podium. Get you from being comfortable.
So we have Jeff here if you have any specific questions. I think at the retreat we went into a lot of detail about what our budget request is. We base our budget on what the state tells us our estimates will be. So you have to spend money to get money. And so I guess, do you have any specific questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have some,
Okay.
but I wanted to save those until you were finished.
Well, I mean, there's not a whole lot to say other than what, during the, your budget retreat, we went into quite a bit of detail. And if you notice in what we've given you, our budget is reduced from last year.
Well, my numbers, when I did the comparison, I went back to 2015 numbers.
11.
Yeah, and very quickly, I mean, I think you can answer them without too much trouble between the two of you. I see the Washington Seniors Center, we've gone from 5,000 to 12,000 in a 2-year period.
Home care community block grant funding that comes through.
So it's a pass-through?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
The county's responsible for 10% of that, but that's what's
Okay.
appropriated to that.
And this is probably the same thing. Travel for client transportation's going from 5 to 30 in a 2-year period. Is that a pass-through?
Yes,
Yes,
that's
sir.
the 53 line. 5 to 30, yes, that's what is through the 8 home care community block grant.
Okay.
That's transportation for individuals who aren't implemented.
Purchased meals have gone up 102,000. They've gone from 70 to 172 in the 2-year.
That was our home delivery meals and congregate meals that that the county provides the contract with Biden to purchase those meals. So that is also, we have to spend to pull that.
And I remember last year, the county allocated additional dollars, strictly county dollars, to supplement the folks on the waiting list for the home delivered meals.
Telephone's going from 50,000 to 91,000 in a 2-year period.
I think the telephone line was one of those difficult ones where we didn't have a breakdown we didn't see the bill. So we were just kind of budgeting what we thought it was, and so we finally were able to get a copy of what the bill was. So what you have now is a true reflection. It kind of alludes to what Mr. Alligood they were talking about earlier with, the bill was kind of all meshed in with everybody else. So we're trying to give you a true cost to what the telephone is.
Okay. Hospitalization is going up in a 2-year period 14%. Is there any change in the plan, or is it just?
I will have to give that to the county, the salary, the benefits, all those.
Yeah.
So the hospitalization's not a,
That's an employee.
Hospitalization from the county.
Hospitalization, countywide, we estimated a 5% increase, not really knowing, we haven't been told yet what that number's going to be. So we put in a 5% increase.
because I don't like the 2016 numbers. I went back to the actual audit numbers, and when you look at it that way, it's going up 14% in a 2-year period.
We could have had some vacancies because the
Right.
14, 15 numbers are actual numbers, not budgeted numbers.
And I think this is a typo. There was a line on there for 410K employer contributions.
401K.
Yeah, but why is there a separate line for that one?
We have some, I think that means not
Is it-
the agent.
That is why.
There's, we have some of the agent budget is separate. And I think maybe last year some things were left out, so you may see some differences in some of our budget items. They were, for some reason, just left out.
Yeah, I mean,
So
we've seen that time and time.
We've done
last
some
year.
budget amendments to try to.
75.
Huh.
Page 75, about halfway down. It's a typo on our piece. It says 410K, but it's 401K.
Yeah, it's supposed to be 401K.
But it's because you have different people. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
different grouping.
We have in-home aides that we've employed that provide services through our home care community block grant. They have to, and they're full-time employees, so they're eligible for benefits just like our other staff. They've always been broken out in the budget, so that's their benefit package.
And one of the vacancies we have is that we're looking at how we can be more cost-effective with the in-home aides. So the reason it's vacant is that we're not filling it, we're using contract folks to fill it because we're finding that it's more cost-effective for the county. So we may put it in contract services, but as opposed to, so when you see we have a vacancy in the in-home aid, it doesn't mean we don't need it, we're just using it a different way.
I think that answers my questions. I'm assuming, based on conversation I hear from time to time, you guys provide some IT services for our county at no cost? Is that a true statement?
We have Derek pretty much provide support to
Provide
the county
support.
where necessary.
And we thank you for that.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Jim's is kind of the same way on the public health side. I kind of deferred to Jim to talk about this program.
Yeah, out of the $3,482,000 budget, $2 million, a little over $2 million of that comes from state, federal dollars, and billing services to the clinic, which means that the county appropriations comes up to $1,474,331. So that's the county dollars. And that is down 4% from the approved budget last year. Yeah, I'm not sure how much more detail you want, but if you want to go through the different pages, I could tell you what, if there's anything that really moved a whole lot for you. So on 79, general health.
You got a question?
Yeah. On medical supplies, went up from 108 to 130.
Is that on page 79?
Page 80.
Well, medical supplies are on all the different ones. Okay, that's immunizations, and that's, if you look at the total budget, you'll see that's gone up quite a bit because we're going to order more vaccinations. We've been able to do a big push on vaccinating folks in the county, and so buying like $40,000 more of immunizations. But with that comes $40,000 in revenue because we charge for the vaccinations.
Okay.
And so that's the big one for immunizations. On 81 is the HIV and STDs. In that case, we got a grant to do testing in the jails and with men. So that increased the budget. Again, the same thing. With it came grant funds. So it didn't cost the county any dollars for that increase. Page 82, TB, that's unchanged. I mean, it's up a little bit. Most of that would be just for increasing service load, trying to get more people in for TB. On 83, that's preparedness dollars. That's pretty much the same as well. Actually, it's a little bit down from last year. On page 84, the BSEP program. 84. That one's down a little bit. Yeah. Adult services on 85. The reason that there is an increase that shows in there is because I moved a position. I moved the tracking of the position out of maternal health into adult services because what I'm doing is increasing services to the adults. A good example is the diabetes self-management class. So the nurse that was doing STDs and other clinic services is now, her position has been moved over here into this line item, so I can see how that is working as far as how much money is going through that position. So the reason that's up is because of a change in position and anticipated new revenue that's coming in there. Like we didn't have last year projected $20,000 that we're expecting to get because of the diabetes program. But that's the reason that's up. But that shouldn't be, county dollars is not involved in that either. Right? County dollars were involved in it last time, but less county dollars this time because of the billing capability. 87, page 87, pretty much the same. That's health promotion dollars. 88, child health.
Advertising has a big jump.
On which one?
Yep.
But yeah, advertising, because one of the ways that we promote health is by doing more advertisement into the newspapers and things like that. So just reallocating some of those funds. Child health on 88. that's pretty much the same, but what you will notice is this is a good example of how the health department budget looks bigger than it really should be. $250,000 of that comes to us and turns around and goes straight back to the school system to pay for school nurses. Let's just pass right on through. 89, maternal health.
They come from the state, Jim.
It does, yes, comes from the state. 89, maternal health. Now, I took some money out of maternal health and put it in adult health. However, this year, we also got a grant to address infant mortality. I talked about that during the budget retreat, that we received funds in order to start a program that is addressing infant mortality. So those dollars are shown in here, but those are all, again, state dollars, not county, and no changes in the county contribution to that. Family planning. Another grant was given to us for infant mortality. Their thought is that if you keep them from getting pregnant, the babies won't have a bad outcome. So again, that's state dollars that came through. Let's see, 91 is WIC. That increase is because I have brought in what's called a medical nutrition therapy, and the WIC, we have registered dietitians there that hadn't been doing this in the past, so what I'm doing them now is giving them some more work to look at clients that come through that need some kind of a registered dietitian to determine why they may have problems with their nutrition or their weight. Page 92 is pregnancy care management, and that went up 20,000, but if you look at the next one, 93, it went down. So these two funds come in as one package. So it used to be distributed this way, now it's distributed this way. So it's the same dollars, it's just in different line items. Environmental health, increased budget in there. A lot of that is because of anticipated increased revenue, because we now started doing classes to, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the class now. Surf Safe program, in order to get restaurant managers and staff trained in how to handle food properly, which has a fee attached to it. We didn't have that in the past, now we're going to have that. And also because we have traditionally been getting reallocated a lot of state funds because we maintain our inspections the way we're supposed to. And so if there's counties that don't get their inspections at a certain level, then they reallocate their funds to the people that did. So we've been doing really well getting that, so we have anticipated that this year. And lastly, is pretty much the same. It's a decrease. So I'm here to answer your questions.
Questions from any commissioners?
Preparedness for Zika virus. Do we have to prepare for that?
I'm sorry?
Zika virus.
Yes.
Preparedness for it.
Well, we have a certain level of preparedness that we have to do, but it's all tied up into the mosquito control process that we do. So that is already pretty much funded. The only thing we've done is started a tip and toss campaign. That's through this fiscal year, not into next year.
Do you think there'll be any grant money available if it does begin to hit the area?
Probably. Because we have a pretty good program here, and we have a vector. We have somebody that's been trained in identifying mosquitoes, and so they would probably tap in on that resource. We were identified as one of 4 regional surveillance centers about 2 years ago. That money stopped, but now, of course, with Zika virus being such a big push, we may see some dollars come in there, but I can't predict that for this year.
But we
next
do have
year.
a mosquito monitoring program in place.
We do. And it shows up in the environmental health section on
Yeah, that's where I see
94.
Mosquito control operating expense.
Yes.
Is that it?
That's part of it, and then there's mosquito supplies, which is another line item above it.
My last question is, do you have any vacancies?
I do not have any vacancy. I have a contract position, but that's part of the grant that's coming in with the Healthy Beginnings.
Thank you, Jeff.
Two questions, James. I was in a meeting in Raleigh 2 weeks ago, and they're talking about the new Food Safety Act, and it also affects produce farms. Are you going to be required to do inspections on produce farms and the processing part within the county?
I have not heard of that. Usually that falls under USDA. So I haven't heard any rumors of that. So
Okay.
I'm assuming that's where it's going through.
I mean, that's beginning to happen in the next 12 months, so
Well, I'll track it. I'll look into it. I'll ask Stacy. He'll probably know better.
And the second question, tell me what the award was that Stacey Harris got.
I don't even remember the name of it.
I saw the initials, but I didn't know what it meant.
He got an award from the, I think it is,
It's a re-
whatever
it was
I
a
tell
re-
you, I'm gonna be wrong, whatever I
Okay.
tell you. Yeah, I forget which association it was.
It
But
was
he
some
did-
kind of a region award for outstanding employee.
It was. He was recognized for his service in the environmental health arena. But again, I just found out he got it this morning. I actually wrote a letter of recommendation for him. I can't remember what it was.
That's it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. I do have one further question, if I may. Jane, in the governor's budget, he includes $30 million for mental health programs. Have you seen anything on that? I know the budget hasn't passed, but any information on that?
Very little of it would go to the health departments as of right now. Most of it would go to
Trillium.
LMEs, which is Trillium.
Yeah, well, they talk about here for case management, heroin, prescription drug use programs, things like that.
It'd probably go to Trillium. And we may get some amount to help with some program, like if they wanted everybody to distribute Narcan or something like that, we may get in on that. But I haven't heard. Thank you.
Okay.
Next department on page 97 is the Veteran Services Department. Karen's here if you have any questions about that. This is a single-person department. She provides the resources and assistance to veterans for what they need. Her budget's essentially flat. You know, I think we added a little bit in there for some new chairs because she's got some pretty old chairs, and she has several conversations with some of her clients that have said they need a sturdy chair.
Okay, any questions for?
I don't remember seeing this last year. It might have been buried somewhere in the.
It was there.
In the numbers. Is this funded 100% by the county, this position?
Yes, sir.
What are the office hours, just for?
8 to 5.
8 to 5?
That's it. Okay, thank you. You good to go?
And page 99 is the area mental health and transportation piece. Out of this is where, like Jim was talking about the LMEs, you'll see the BATS contract, and that is for the lead transportation provider. Now, you'll see in that $73,750. And I actually messed that one up on the next page where the requested on the next page, instead of being 73,750, should actually be 103,750. They asked for $30,000 more this year in the transportation piece, and we kicked that over to a service expansion. So you'll see that again when the outside agencies come in, but just want to
Can I get them to give us a fee schedule? Because I've been hearing some things, and so we need to look at that. Good.
I was thinking about something else. Under VATS,
Yes,
that 73,000 is,
No, that 73,750 is right for what we recommended. But if you look on the next page, page 100, where it shows BATS and it says actual, original, amended, projected, and then 1617 requested, and we left it as 73,750, that actually should be 103,750 because they asked for $30,000 more. And what we said was, nope, we're funding you what you got last year. The $30,000 goes to service expansion. You can come ask the board and explain to them why you need that additional money. So they provided that information in the service expansion package, and they'll be here next week to ask you about that and answer questions. So that just, we messed it up, or I messed it up when we put it in there.
I missed it.
So that's for BATS. They're the lead transportation provider. BCDC, the developmental center, that budget was flat at 55,000. The BCDC elderly transportation handicap fees, 25,000. There's some pass-through money that comes through NCDOT rural grant, rope money. The Trillium Health is the mental health piece, and that's at 157. The alcohol treatment comes out of the bottle tax, 17,000. And then the CJP, the passages piece, that's the recidivism, the vendor, not juvenile, it's through Department of Juvenile Justice, recidivism grant piece that you have a contract with passages to do. It's a pass-through, has to come through the county, and then you contract with passages. She provides the services for the recidivism treatment program, and then she bills the state, and the state turns around and cuts us the check, and we turn around and give her the check. So it's a pass-through grant thing. So, but that's your area of mental health and transportation, and that wraps up your human services piece. So that is where we had hoped to get to tonight. We're here to answer any additional questions you may have.
Okay, so tomorrow,
Tomorrow, we're looking at community services, the education piece, and then public safety.
okay.
I got a question.
Okay.
Can you explain to me, I think I know, but I'm not sure, about the enterprise fund for the trash dump?
Solid waste, yes, sir. Actually, if we can flip back to if we go to the solid waste tab, 159.
159?
Yes, sir. Page 159, there's a blue tab that says solid waste. So I'm sorry, you're not there.
Adjusted that.
Okay, I got it.
So on the revenue side, at the very top up here, you'll see solid waste revenues. There is a solid waste fee that you're collecting. It's the $90 per household in the county that's being charged. And of that, you'll see in the actual in 14-15, $1.975 million. And then the 15-16 original is 1.920. The scrap disposal tax is for scrap tires. You get money from the state for that. You have to use it to dispose of scrap tires. And then the solid white goods tax is money you get every time you buy a washer, dryer, or a white good, a laundry machine, or those kind of things. You pay an additional piece on that for disposal. When you handle that, like refrigerators and all, you can get money from the state back for doing that to handle those white goods. So those are your revenues. And then you'll see down at the very bottom, right there, general fund transfer subsidy. So the $933,963 is what was making up the additional cost of the solid waste fees in 14-15 actual. This year, you had a subsidy of $1.189 million. So on page 161, you can see really clearly what we're proposing to you. In 14-15, when the fee was $90, the fees were 1.9, and you see what the expenses were, a little over $3 million. So you were subsidizing with general fund tax dollars $933,000. If you move to 15-16, which is last year, you'll see that current year, sorry. You'll see that it was being subsidized at a little over $1 million. And what we've suggested to you and recommended to you is that you move that fee to $140. And when you do that, you'll see that the solid waste expenses, which we projected going forward, gives you, based on that number, it gives you $15,000 plus into your solid waste fee. So you're not subsidizing it anymore with general fund dollars. It's on the other side of the balance sheet. It's not under general fund. It's an enterprise fund, just like you look at the water fund. And just like you look at all business-related funds, the fees that you're charging for that service are paying the full ride of that service instead of using general tax dollars.
Okay. Now, just one more. How long will it take for that to be self-supporting?
We make it self-supporting.
Self-supporting as of now?
Well, as of the new budget, yes, sir.
Yeah, right, okay.
Yes, sir.
I got you.
Commissioner Booth.
I just wanted to ask you this, and I know you don't have no way of knowing, but some kind of way, we gotta find a way to stop out-of-county stuff from going in our landfills and our dump sites. That is a hellacious price that's costing us in both counties. You see people coming from different counties bringing their trash at our dump site, and we don't have no way of control.
There are some ways folks have tried to do that with stickers on vehicles and those kind of things. It becomes an enforcement issue, and then you get people. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think I understand exactly what you're saying. It's just difficult to enforce because you may be driving a different truck today than you did yesterday. So somebody may say, "Well, you can't dump." You say, "Well, I live here," So there are ways to try to fix that, and we can certainly look into that, because you're right, there's a lot of leakage. There's a lot of folks who live just across the county line that say, well, y'all's convenience site's a whole lot cheaper than mine to get to, closer to get to, so I'm gonna go over there and dump. And you're paying for all of it out of that fee, so you're exactly right.
Okay, anything further?
Good for me.
All right, we will recess till 5:30 tomorrow.
Yes, sir.